Hello, Justice Warriors. This is just us going live. We're going live because we are waiting the announcement of the decision of Richard Allen. And it's been hitting news as well as national news.
Yeah.
And
I don't know about you, but I am shaking from head to toe.
I'm not going to mess with this video because I don't want to, but I wanted to go ahead and make it live just for people could see.
Oh,
It looks like people are coming out. There were people screaming and yelling.
I don't know. I hope this is good for the families. People seem to be smiling, so
we've heard there's people yelling in the background.
Yeah.
Of about guilty or guilty of all counts. And you can see better than I can, Paige. So if you recognize anybody.
Yeah, there's Tara there with her wife. She's hugging people. There's Carrie that just walked there. Kelsey, you just saw walk past as well. That's Carrie right there, Libby's mum with the pink t-shirt. Oh, that's Rosie.
There was a lot of people outside just screaming
to the
all
top of their
kinds
lungs.
of things. There's been horrible things going on. Days leading up to this of there were people
Kathy
allegedly taking down Justice for Abby and Libby signs.
Kathy is in tears. Kathy Allen, that was her leaving. She is in tears. With Baldwin walking right behind.
Everybody is exiting the court. That's pretty quick.
Yeah, you can see all the family right there. There's Kelsey, there's her husband, there's Tara, Carrie, and they're all hugging each other, you know. Oh, there's Abby's mom.
There's family, yep. There's family.
Anna. Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, we're just watching live at Delphi, people exiting. Here it is. Richard Allen is guilty of murdering Abby Williams and Libby German.
Oh my God.
The jurors find Richard Allen is found guilty.
Oh my God.
Now, we don't know. We don't know against
what charge?
What specific charges here, if they're all yet. I'm looking.
They did it.
So he definitely was found guilty. The decision meant the jurors did find that the state's evidence, including the bullet expert, and his confessions compelling. They were less swayed by the defense assertion that investigators were sloppy. He is charged with all 4 counts of murder.
Oh my God, I'm so glad.
So, if you're joining us, Richard Allen is found guilty on all 4 counts of murder. Wow.
I literally can't contain myself. Oh, I'm just so happy for the families. Oh, that's what we wanted. That's what
We
they
wanted
got.
them to make a decision about what's going to happen, and wow.
Today is the day.
Yeah, the day is the day.
And that's the
I'm
perfect time for
interested
the
to see if we
Delphi.
get the family together. Wow, I'm just trying to absorb it right now, honestly.
No, I guess I can't talk. It's like, wow.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And that they found him guilty of all. I mean, that would be a description for when the judge, description of, can you find of both or not? And so Richard Allen, this is live at the courthouse, people leaving. We're waiting. I'm sure that this is
going to be an announcement.
An announcement and stuff from that.
Yeah.
But we just showed the family leaving the courthouse. Richard Allen is found guilty on all 4 counts of murder. It was surrounded by people waiting outside, yelling things. Yep. There's
look at everybody running up.
and I'll go, I hate to mess with it because I'm sure the other thing they're waiting for is the prosecution to come out maybe and say something, maybe the defense.
Yeah.
Although we saw him leave, he could come back and
well, Kathy was being escorted out by someone, I'm not sure who, and she was obviously in tears, and then Baldwin was walking behind her. So yeah, he could just be comforting her.
Okay, so the live feed cut was done from that. Let me go back and see. Here we go. Nope, I think that's the same. I don't know why it shows it breaking news.
Is there one on their YouTube channel? Because I think there was one on YouTube that I was looking at that is still live on the same news station.
Right, let me see if I can pull that up. But we were watching I'll pull this, at least this back up here.
The jury's verdict. They concluded that Richard Allen is guilty on all 4 counts.
Yep, all 4 counts. I'll go back to this, let you guys see. Maybe.
If you went to YouTube, it's possible there's many news stations that may be live too.
Right. So we've got the decision, guys. We've got, it's crazy.
Yeah, I thought I'd have more to say at this moment, but
It's
we don't. It's surreal, isn't it? Like, it doesn't even feel like reality. Like, I can't even imagine how the families feel. Like, I just hope they finally have a sense of relief and they can breathe
here we
for
go.
the first time.
Hold on. Let me share this new one.
Procedural moves that happened long ago, dating back here over the last year in this case, things that Judge Gall ruled on, those will all be brought up, and all of those things were preserved on the record by the defense team so that when this case does go to the Court of Appeals, those will be considered. But again, today, guilty. That is the verdict. That is, these 12 jurors who spent the last nearly month of their lives looking at all the evidence, looking at all the testimony. Decisive decision from these jurors today. They say Richard Allen is guilty of killing Abby Williams and Libby German.
And we have not been able to talk with that panel, and that we may never hear from them, or we may. I mean, it depends if they want to talk about what those deliberations were like, what were key points of evidence, what was it the confession, was it the cartridge, what was it that led them to have this unanimous decision beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, when you think about those confessions, Bob, that we heard of him, at least the ones that they played in court, in those confessions, I mean, he sounded fairly logical, no?
He did. The one confession that stands out in my mind the most was on a call to his mother, Janice. And he said, did Kathy, my wife, tell you that I confessed? And she said, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. You didn't do it. They're messing with your mind. He said, no, I did it. And she said, no, honey, I can't. I know you don't have it in you to do something like that. And his response was, Mom, I wouldn't sit here and tell you I did it if I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And that That's really true. Stood out to me. So ultimately, then it comes down for the jurors to think
everything else was an act for him to rail back his confessions.
Was, thinking clearly at that time, or that he was in a state of psychosis. These jurors believed at this point, they believed the prosecutor. They believed the state saying Richard Allen was in his right mind when he made those statements. And a lot of times you hear when someone says something, believe them. And in this situation, the jury believed Richard Allen when he said, I killed Abby and Libby.
Wow, what a tough day. What a tough day, but maybe also relief for this community. This has been a journey that they unwittingly were a part of. They didn't want to have this thrust upon their community, the fear, the search that there might be a killer living amongst them, the way that they changed and navigated their lives because of the thought that their children would not be safe to go out and walk along the streets. Along
we
the
showed a little bit earlier some of the video just out in
supervised. That
outside the courthouse that showed the families leaving the courthouse,
perhaps
hugging each other.
Put this chapter to rest.
We saw
very first
family members.
Witness Sarah Carbaugh, who
Kathy Allen leaving, crying
along the side of the road on the day of the murders, and she told the jury, she said, this crime, the events that happened on February 13th, 2017.
A lot of people.
She said it has turned this town and everyone in it upside down.
screaming and yelling
That we certainly know
out
to be a
certain
true statement.
people.
Folks I've talked to here over the last several weeks have said that
It's
Delphi has never
really
been the same.
interesting
And
because
they were very much looking for and hoping for
you
some
know,
type of resolution.
you
some
kind
type
of wondered
healing.
whether it'd be one charge
Today's
versus
the
the
day
other charge.
The verdict came
But
down,
one
and we will
felony
see if
charge is
now
because of the
starts
kidnapping,
to
and the
happen.
others is of
17
straight out
days
murder.
of testimony,
And they
64
found him
witnesses,
guilty of all.
387 exhibits, 7.5 years since the murder, 2 years since Richard Allen was arrested, 21 days since opening statements, and 4 days of deliberations that lasted approximately 19 to 20 hours. And now we have a verdict, guilty of all counts against Richard Allen. That's the very latest from here. We're going to send it back to you, Scott.
Anne Marie and Bob Siegel in Delphi, and they're going to be standing by waiting to see if we might be able to talk to either the prosecutors in the case or the defense team, if the jury may be willing to speak. If that happens, we'll
I
bring
don't
that
know
to
about
you.
the jury.
And certainly if we hear from either family
Yeah,
of
that
these
was
2
they
young
had-
girls
home.
who died 7.5 years
They
ago,
had-
we'll bring that to you as well. Want to bring into our conversation
So
Katie
many
Jackson Lindsay, who's been the
issues.
13 News legal analyst.
I'm
throughout
going to keep
these,
this running for we
19
can
or 20
see if
days
they get
worth
to
of,
interview anybody.
coverage of the Delphi murders
Um,
trial. She's been with us every night on the Delphi debrief.
Oh,
What's your
happy
reaction
birthday
to Richard
to
Allen
you.
being found guilty on
Oh
all
yeah,
4
happy
charges?
birthday. What a great day for a
attorney,
birthday.
I'm surprised.
Today
But
is
you
the
can
day.
never really be surprised by a verdict. In
Today
this case,
is the
we weren't
day.
allowed in the courtroom, and so it's hard to get a real
I
feel
think it's
for the
hard for
evidence and the
people
impact that it
to
was
to
having.
argue anything. But
But this
what I
jury
was going
did
to say
their
about the
job.
jurors
They
is you've
worked
got the
hard
jurors who had
for
trouble that
hours, for
we
4
had
days
people
of
trying to take
deliberations.
pictures
They
of
asked
them
questions,
when they were trying to
and
be
that is the verdict that
selected,
they
as
reached.
well as
So
on the
I'm surprised
vehicles,
based on what I
to try
understand
to
in the
figure
verdict
out
that
who
we
these
received,
people
but
were.
we have to trust them. We have to trust our system.
Let's go back and, for those of you who have been
you
following this
know,
trial, and maybe
and
those of you who
it's
have not, let's go back to the state's
I
evidence
think that's
that they began
horrible.
putting on. A couple of their early witnesses were describing
You know,
Bridge
because
Guy,
I
the guy that we've
consider
all
that,
seen on the video,
you
but
know,
describing a much
trying
younger,
to
describing a
hamper
man
the
in
jury.
his 20s, a tall, muscular man with brown
Yeah,
poofy hair.
intimidation.
That
And
wasn't 40-year-old
hopefully,
Richard Allen at that
you
point. And
know,
so, there
that
were the
made an
thoughts that
impact
maybe
the other way.
witnesses had the wrong
You know,
person, or that they were
Mhm.
describing someone that was quite different than Richard Allen.
Agreed. And that was the first evidence that we heard, right? That we heard as the public, that the jury heard, that there was this youthful
I
man
think
with
that,
boyish, youthful looks with
you
longer
know,
hair.
also the other thing
And we as
is
the
that
public, not the
after
jury,
hearing
but as the
all of
public, we also
the
were aware of those
um,
sketches that were created as a result of this witness testimony
all
or
of
these
the
witnesses
all of
giving
Right.
these
the
statements to the police.
testimony,
And we knew
all
that
of the
wasn't Richard Allen.
evidence, they
And
didn't find
so
him guilty
that was
on
the first
one
impression of the
or
state's
just the
evidence. And as
other.
it went on
Like they
even
didn't just
longer, it
say,
seemed to
"Oh,
be
he's
more of that, where they had evidence that
only
could
for
be Richard
kidnapping,"
Allen, but
right?
could also leave room
It's
for reasonable doubt. But I think ultimately what got them over the finish line, and rightfully so, was those confessions. We've said over and over
well,
and over,
ultimately,
it's hard
those
to
jurors
convince
believe that
your
Richard Allen
client didn't
kidnapped
do
and
something as
murdered
a
the
defense attorney
girls.
if your client has
You
said
know,
immediately
nothing else
that he did,
backed
and
Right.
it. You know,
emphatically
the
the way
timeline the
that Bob
defense gave, the
described,
series
especially
the
with the
defense
call with his
gave,
mother. So I think that's
obviously
probably
did not
what got the
sway
jury there, and you can
their
understand
right,
conclusion. They
how
can
they could
do.
reach that conclusion with those
right.
confessions.
And remember, as this case was
So if
beginning
you're
and the
just
state was
joining
presenting
us,
the
we were
case, the
showing at
jury
the very
was hearing
beginning
these emotional
um,
confessions that
the
Richard
crowd
Allen was making
outside.
Mhm.
from
Um,
prison. He did talk to his mother. He did talk
at
to his
first,
wife,
it didn't look like
and
anything, but
each
I wanted to
time
go
would
ahead and go
say,
live
"I did it."
because
Now there was
there were
one
people
recording where
out
he
there
said, "I did it.
screaming
I
and
think I
yelling
did it.
certain
I
things
don't
at
know if I
people
did it."
while
And
they
in
were
a
living
cover, there's
outside
a
of
lot
the
of
courtroom.
testimony
As
brought
you
in
read
during
mine.
the trial
And it's
where psychologists were
it was
brought in
family
that had been
members
talking to Richard Allen
leaving,
in prison during the time that he was
and
awaiting this trial to start.
then
And
we
there was a
said
lot of
Kathy
testimony
Allen
that
was
he was going
leaving,
through a mental health breakdown, that he was going
crying and
through,
upset.
various problems
Richard
while he was
Allen
being
is
held for
found
13 months
guilty
in
on
solitary confinement. But at the end of the
both
day, as you
the
mentioned,
2
maybe the
felony murder
confessions were the
counts
very thing that the
along
jury
with
said, no, that's
the
the guy.
2 murder
Right. And I
counts.
mean, that is very strong evidence. Having been a deputy prosecutor myself, If you have a
And,
case with the
you
confession,
know, there was
you almost
a
consider
lot of
that
stuff
case a
that's been
slam
going
dunk. I
on
don't think the prosecution took for
about the
granted
case that
that
we,
there are other evidence
that,
that was a
you know,
challenge
I
and
would say
consider
that
that a
I was
slam
worried
dunk.
about
But
too.
obviously, they
But
put
part of the
that
thing that
together
was
very
going on
well
is
and
because
presented it in a
I
way that
found
it
it
was compelling
strange
to
of
the
how
jury. And
much that
so I think if we
social
were able to
media
talk to that
itself
jury,
was
we would
trying
learn that
to
that is what took them over the edge towards guilty.
All right, let's talk about what they
spread
called the magic bullet. Okay, I guess we've got some new information from
misinformation.
Anne Marie
Oh,
Tiernan.
wait,
So
hold
let's
on.
go back outside the Delphi
See what they
courthouse.
said.
Anne Marie, what have you got?
Scott, I'm here with Emily, who was just on the other side of the courthouse where state police and some family members came out and made some comments. And she joins us now with, first of all, what state police said, and then let's talk about the family.
Yeah, state police saying at this point they're not going to make any comment because Judge Gall has not lifted the gag order on this case. They said that they will be making statements next month after sentencing, but for right now, they don't have anything to say because that gag order is still in place.
And then Richard Allen's wife came out.
Richard Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, came out. She was crying and she just said to the media, "This isn't over at all." That was her one indication. And then we had a close family friend of, I believe, Libby German coming out, and she was talking about pushing for legislation to prohibit crime scene photos from being released online behind some kind of paywall, from being able to pay to see graphic crime scene photos. And as you know, it was in the past week that we had seen someone somehow had leaked photos of the girls of the crime scene, and you know,
And
just
we
terrible
still have
photos.
people
And
who
so,
have done
you
it.
know, the family,
Even
want
after
to
the
work on
thing
some
happened,
kind
we
of
still
law to
had other
prohibit this
people
from happening,
on true
because that,
crime who was
just added to the tragedy of this. I
In
think
many
for
fucking
the
cases, it's
releasing the
not
children
them.
goddamn scenes
out there
again.
in the public forum like that, and to
Remember
think that someone
Gannon
was paying
Stout?
to see such a gruesome scene.
Yeah,
You know, they
his
want something to
autopsy
be done
images
about
were
it so
leaked
that no other
as
families
well
have to go through that.
by
So
Yes,
YouTubers.
certainly very vulnerable pictures, and just only
very.
adding to the pain that the
So
families have
the
absolutely
gag
had to
order
experience and
is
endure.
officially
Any
still
sense from police? Did the sense
there.
of state police feeling vindicated, or were they very stoic?
Stoic. They did
It's
not say.
kind of
I
sad.
mean, a spokesperson came out and said, you know, this is going to be real short. We
So
don't
they're
have
going to
much
wait to
say. Judge
find
Gall
out
has
in
not
order
lifted
for
the
them
gag
to be
order,
able
but
to
we're
turn
going to be happy
around
to
and
comment. We'll put something together
actually make
next month
a
after sentencing, and that was it.
So
a
Bob and I were
sentence that the
continuing
jury
to
still
talk
has to
about
do.
what
That's
his
probably
observations
why.
were in the courtroom, and you were able to walk around the courthouse and get a little bit of a sense of what the scene is right now. What were you able to observe?
Well, you know, interesting, as I was going over to,
I
to
just
that gathering
what I
over
was
there, a
fixing
woman
to
was
say
holding up
actually
a sign that
regarding
said,
all
you know,
of
the
that
only
was
crime here is the crime from
because
police
the
and the prosecution and, you know, the state. So,
it's
you know, so
it's
there are some people that think that this
people
was the
who
wrong
were
decision,
spreading
and they, you know,
like
they're vocal about that
lies
and holding
about
up their
stuff
signs.
that you're
But I would
like, I
say
don't even
the majority of folks
understand
here, very
why they would
Yes,
have to
Samantha
spread certain
Johnson is
lies. You know what I
also
mean?
here, and she's been
I don't
talking
get
and
it.
getting some community
With no
reaction. Joins us
evidence
now. Sam, what have
as
you been able
well.
to learn from the people that you've talked to?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, Anne Marie, I am currently at the location Emily was just at a few moments ago. We've heard from several community members. We heard from state police, as Emily mentioned too. I want to tell you too, so many of the people who are here waiting for this verdict have been here for weeks. So many of them have been camped out day and night to be one of the first to hear the verdict. We talked to a woman, her name is Sarah. She lives here in Delphi. She says she's a family friend of the girls. And she told us today is the day, right?
Today
That
is
phrase,
the
we've
day.
continued to
That's
hear
what I
that for
posted.
years now. And we
Yay.
talked to her just a moment ago. She said she could have almost bust with excitement because she said today is finally the day. Take a listen. You said, I've been praying.
I have been praying. I said, as you know, we usually had 4 or 5 of us, just a few signs to show respect to the girls and what this community has went through for the past 7.5 years. Today is a new day. Today is that day, the day they can start healing. Today's that day that those families can start the healing process. This part is done.
Oh, this is
So
so
as a
amazing.
community, now they get to heal all together. This community and the surrounding communities and counties surrounded them. Also, big shout out to law enforcement. They came from everywhere around Indiana. You couldn't tell what department, but they were so cohesive together. They blended well. You didn't see the
community
division in
has
the rank or
taken
anything. They
such,
protected this county. And
you know,
now
they
this
just
county
weren't the
needs to
same
heal.
after all this stuff, you know, they just,
Mhm.
Now, as we know, there are obviously two sides to this case. And like Emily mentioned a second ago, we saw Richard Allen's family walk right through these doors, one of them hand in hand with defense attorney Brad Rosie, Andrew Baldwin, Jennifer Auger, also walking out with Richard Allen's family, his mom crying, his wife Kathy crying. And then as she passed us, she said, "This isn't over at all." Of course, much more to come here in Delphi. Anne Marie and Emily, we're going to stay on this side. We expect that more people may be coming out of the courthouse still. We'll check in with you in just a few minutes.
Sam, thanks so much. We're rejoined here by Bob Siegel, who just had a conversation with Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter. What did you learn from that conversation?
Well, again, there's still a gag order, so there's nothing official. There's nothing on the record. Probably the most that I can say on the, you know, as far as his reaction today is the reaction that he showed in the courtroom. Just out here on the steps right now, he was walking with his wife, and when I said, "Mr. Superintendent, how are you?" He just took a big deep breath. Could tell, you know,
Oh, bless.
he's taken this case very personally and been very personally involved over the last 7.5 years in the courtroom. He and his wife, their hands were clutched. I saw when the verdict was read, he squeezed her hand a little bit tighter. She squeezed his
I
hand
think
back.
that
A few
one of
moments
the
later,
other
he put his
things
head down in his hands and he started crying.
is that
After the
there
verdict,
was a lot
he
of
reached
people
back and, you know, he
who
squeezed the hand of Becky Patty, who was his
sat here.
grandmother. He went up,
Oh, wait a minute.
gave hugs to the prosecutors and the entire
Oh,
prosecution team. There's been countless
sorry. They
countless
just had
hours put
Kathy
in by
Patty,
state
and I wanted to
police
say it.
investigators who, not just over the last 2
I think
years
that,
since the arrest,
you know,
but
the thing
obviously for
is
the
that
5.5
there's
years
probably
even
going to
before
be
that,
new
from
laws,
the
new
day that
stuff
these
going on
girls' bodies
that
were found, that have been working
that
tirelessly on this case.
Richard
So for Indiana State
Allen
Police and the investigators who
Mhm.
worked on this case,
supporters
obviously,
or,
I don't know if
you know,
victory is the
or
correct
or
word
let me
today
reword it like this,
because
not necessarily
nothing is
Richard
going
Allen,
to
but
bring back Abby and Libby. But as far as justice, this
anti-police
was the verdict they were
supporters,
looking
right?
for, and
Anti-evidence
this was these were the words that they hoped Judge
people
Gall would read
who
after the jury came back this afternoon.
were,
It was
there
such
were
a heinous
some
crime.
who
These
were
girls
spreading
were just in the 8th grade, and this heinous
lies.
crime in this very
You know,
rural,
like
seemingly
even
safe
lies about
environment,
like
that
something that
they
happened in a
that
courtroom
they went
saying a
missing, and
jury
then that they
member
had been
did,
so brutally
which
murdered.
wasn't
That's
true.
why this
It
has
was
gotten so much
it was the
attention,
defense
not
attorney.
only in this state, in this country,
And
but
I
around the
never
world. People
got the
following this
feeling
case.
to
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about
why
it so many
do
times
we
before.
have
Before this happened, this was that
people
quaint little
spreading
bedroom community where people really slept with their
wrong
doors open, and they
information like
talked
that.
about that
I
to us
I
in
don't
those
get it. I
early
don't get
days
the point of it.
after the girls' bodies were discovered. And
I
after
think
that,
people
things
just
really
see
changed.
the
And when we
attention
would
this
come here
case
years
gets,
later to do
and
different follow-up stories
unfortunately,
before
there's
there had been a break in the
people
case or
out
an
there
arrest,
who
if you
really,
talk to the
really
young
need
people that had gone to
attention.
school with Abby and Libby, they would
And
tell
I
you how
don't
their
know
lives
why,
had changed, that their
but
parents were
they
less
love
willing
to
to
insert
just kind of
themselves.
let them go for a walk in the woods. And I
Um,
was just kind of looking at the
yeah,
day today and the blue sky and the
and
temperature,
it's
and I
just
remember
wrong.
it being
And
like
a
that
lot of
on
them are
February
getting
13th,
exposed,
February
and they
14th.
will
You can see
continue to
every
do
different
so.
age, young
Hopefully, there
people's
will
training.
be,
When you're talking about
like you
Doug
just
Carter and
said,
his
maybe
involvement, I
laws
remember
around
him
that kind of
coming in
thing,
on the state
where
police
they're not
helicopter
allowed
and getting out
to
to
do this
give
kind of
the
stuff
press
in terms
conference
of
and talk
true
about that.
crime
It
cases,
landed in
because
a
these
field right
are
across from
real
the Mears
cases
entrance
for
where the
real
girls
people,
had got dropped off that
and
day.
shouldn't be
And
allowed.
so and
I mean, I
when
know
every time
that
there
there
was an update and a
was,
press conference, you would
I
see
know
Doug
for
Carter
you were worried
come out
about
and
stuff
address
going on,
the media
worried
and
about
the
what was
public
happening with the
when they
jury.
released that second sketch.
Mhm.
Him saying, I remember, and this made
But
everyone's the
really,
hair on their arms stand up
when
when
they
he looked
came
in the
out
camera and
asking the
said, we
questions to
believe you might be in
relook
this room
at
hiding in plain sight. We believe you are
the
in
Yeah.
this room,
video
maybe hiding in
itself
plain sight.
and
You might
the
even be in
Holman,
this room. And I
I
remember
kind of
that
felt
day
good
everyone
that they were
kind of
paying
just kind of
attention
looked
to
around
details
at
to
each
ask
other.
those
So
questions.
to hear Doug Carter, to hear his reaction in that courtroom,
You know,
that
and
tracks.
And I think
you
it's,
know,
one of the interesting
you
things to
gotta
point out here that
understand
was
that
emphasized
just like we
by
did that video the other
prosecutor
day,
Nick
they're
McLeland
not, they
during
haven't been
closing
following
arguments
this case.
is
I know it's
they
shocking
had
for lots of us, including
obviously very
ourselves,
important
that there's
video
people
of
who
Bridge
actually
Guy
have never
that
heard
Libby
of the
German had
Delphi
captured
murder
on her
case.
phone. They had folks who placed Bridge Guy
You know,
along the trails and on the
Oh
bridge
yeah.
on the day of the murders. And they had a
It's
single
surprising to me when
person
there are people like,
at
you
the
know, in
crime
America
scene
that haven't heard of
that
it
matched
when I'm sitting
who
here in the
she said
UK
cycled
and,
through Richard Allen's
you know, I
gun
heard of it a
after
long time ago, but that
they
might
went
have just
back and
been
they
because I was
re-interviewed him
in
years later
crime
because they had
anyway a long
remembered that he
time
had said he was out
ago.
at
And
the
this
scene
case
that day.
just stuck
But
to
that
me and
was
it's
it.
all I've thought about
And
since.
Nick McLeland told the jury
But
that was
yeah,
all
there's
they
a
were
lot
going
of
to
people
have
who don't know
to
this is
present
going
to
on
you
even now.
until Richard Allen
you may
went to
want to
prison
lift
to
your
await his
voices a little
trial
louder just
and made
because of the video. I'm going to
confession
keep
after
playing that in the
confession after
background.
confession. And
But
one has to wonder
um,
today if it
but
were
yes,
not
the gag
for those
order is in
confessions, would
place
this jury have
until the
come back
judge
with
officially
the
lifts
same
it.
result?
That confession to his
And they
psychologist,
still, the
Dr.
jury
Monica
still
Waller,
has
talking about
to,
that,
you know, they still have
you
to have
know,
sentencing.
according to her, that when he was talking to her and confessing to her, he had said he had, you know, taken the girls off the bridge and had just planned to rape them, and then he got scared off by a van and took them then across the creek.
You know, I
and
don't
killed them. And it was
understand
that
that.
van
Not that he's going to
detail
tell you all the
that
truth, but
investigator said was only a detail
that
that
he's
the
going to
killer
sit
would know.
here
So,
and his only
and
plan
then
was
of
to
course
rape
they,
them,
you know,
rape
talked
them.
to
And
a
then
man,
what?
Brad Weber, that lives in
He
that
still
area
brought
that
a
drives
knife and a
van,
gun.
who testified at least
Yeah,
during
and
the
what was the
trial
motive for
that he did
killing
drive
them
home. He
then?
did come home from work that day. He
Because
was driving
that
the
makes
van,
no
and it
sense.
would have fit the timeline
Just
of
being
when,
possibly
you know, the
seen,
state police
interrupted
say
by a
that Bridge
van,
Guy had
you're
taken the
gonna
girls off
change
the
your
bridge.
whole
So
motive
that
to
van, I
murdering
think, was
them.
a key part, wouldn't you say?
It'll. I would love to
Yes, you
be
know.
I'm trying to check if I
inside the
can
minds
turn
of those
this.
jurors. They listen to so much testimony.
Is
They
that a little bit
reviewed
better?
so many exhibits.
Yeah,
They got so
wonderful,
much
because we can still
information,
hear it.
contradictory information from
Oh,
both
lovely.
sides.
That's good. It's showing the
And
location
it is
and
possible.
everything.
It is possible that we will have a chance to talk to some of the jurors later. But I would imagine many of them, if not most of them, if not all
So
of them,
again, if you're
would very
just
much
joining
like to
us,
go back
Richard Allen
to
is found
their lives
guilty
at this point. This has been
on all four
a really
charges on
long
felony
haul,
murder
26
and
days
murder.
sequestered away
The
from
beginning
their
of the
families and
video
their communities.
shows
So we may not know
live
exactly
footage
what the
they were
tipping point was
showing
for these
with
jurors,
the
but it was
family
unanimous, obviously, today.
One of
leaving
the things that
the
made this so
courthouse.
hard on this community were those composite sketches
Kathy
going
Allen,
out
Richard
after
Allen's
we
wife,
saw the
also
video
leaving.
of the bridge guy and the audio down the hill. That
Sorry,
those
I had to go tell my
I've got to
partner.
make
composite
arrangements
was
because I need
compared
to
with every
get
man that
out
lives
there
in this
for
community. Every
celebratory
man that
drinks.
lives in
That
this
this
county
trial
was
is
compared to those composite
over.
that composite sketch, and what pressure, what
I think
kind
that
of microscope
part of
that
this
must
stuff,
have been like to be a man of
um,
those general characteristics living
I
in this
think part of
community
the
during
thing
that time, and not just one
that
composite
for
sketch, two
me
composite
that was
sketches a
really
few years
solid
apart.
evidence
And
was
interestingly
at the
enough,
very
when it was all said
beginning,
and done
because
through
I
the
think the
trial, those composite
defense was
sketches were not
trying
allowed in.
to
The jury never
say,
saw those sketches.
okay,
Those sketches, some of them are still hanging up
he
in the
wasn't
community
there
today.
at
We
the
saw a
time
flyer
he
on our way
told
back from
Dan
lunch, and there
Dolan
was
he was there, right?
composite sketch number
He's
2.
not there at that
What
time.
it ended up, but they
He's
that
actually
the
there a
same
little
person, maybe, you know,
later than
they
what
have
he
similar
told
features,
Dan
but it was
Dolan
hard to,
originally.
you know, when you looked at them, it didn't
And
seem, at least to my
when
eye,
he
I mean,
did that
they didn't seem similar. But
confession, he also, or
the
not
jury never saw those
confession,
sketches.
the tip, I'll call it
Okay,
what they called it, a
we
tip.
were getting some
himself
direction,
in.
but I wasn't able to hear. Could you say it again?
He did acknowledge
Ashley?
that he saw 3 girls because Dan Dolan did write that down.
Okay, I don't know. We got
And was
we
like,
were,
and made
okay,
a notation
understand.
that's
Samantha
that
Johnson
need to
has,
follow
is
up,
on the
need to
other
find
side of
out
the
who these
courthouse
3
and is
girls
standing
are
by
that
with
he
some
saw.
family members. Let's go
Well,
over there
that's
and
why
see,
when
Sam, what
Kathy
have you been able
Shank
to learn?
came upon this actual tip, which I'm still going to do a
Well,
video
Anne-Marie and
on
Emily, just a few
again.
moments ago when that verdict was read, the families of the 2 girls came out right here
Hold
on the
on.
sidewalk underneath the flag. They hugged, they were crying. We saw smiling happen even.
We
Obviously,
showed
there's
that
a lot of
video. We
emotions
showed
you
that
have
at the
to
beginning
imagine.
part of
And
this
like we
video.
mentioned
So if
earlier,
you
they had been
are
staying
coming
in
in
a
later, you
business
can
just
watch
across
that.
the street here for days now as this entire community waited for a verdict. I just saw Becky Patty, the grandmother of Libby German, who has been such a spokesperson. She's been at all the hearings for this case.
Aw.
She hugged a family member at that door. She was smiling. She was laughing. Just a moment ago, they walked inside, they gathered their items, and they left, which to me says we've waited. And again, that phrase, today is the day for them.
Today is the
That
day.
sign to me showed that, okay, we have waited as long as we could. We've got the verdict. Our job here is done. So Anne Marie and Emily, of course, we expect more from families. It's important to note, like we mentioned, that gag order is still in place. So they won't talk to you necessarily, but you have to imagine those emotions will continue to come in the days to come. So we'll keep an eye on things here. We'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Samantha, I'll go ahead and take it back for now. We'll get out to Anne Marie, Bob, and Emily, and yourself if you have any other new information that we can share on our ongoing coverage
So
of this verdict that has come in about 20 minutes ago in Delphi, that Richard Allen has been found guilty on all 4 counts. 2 counts
I
of felony
think
murder,
that part
2
of
counts
the,
murder
again,
and
what
the
I was
death
saying
back
is
in
the evidence of him
2017
saying
of these 2
about the
young
3 girls, the
Libby
notation
German
at the
was just
bottom of them to
13,
find out who the
and
3
Abby
girls
Williams
were,
was just 13.
then
We always want to
something
remind our
I
viewers,
think
this is
is
always about these 2
fishy
young
how
girls.
that
It's about
ended
the
up
family, the
missing,
loss
because the
that they
most
have
frustrating
suffered
thing
for the
about
last
that
7.5
is that
years.
if that
And while there
piece
is
of
justice
paper,
for these
if that
families today,
tip
there can never be any closer
of
because those
Richard
girls are never
Allen
coming back, and our hearts continue to
admitting
break, and
that
a
he
lot of
was
prayers
out
are going
on
to
the
be said tonight
trail.
for
He
these 2
admitted he
young
called it the
families,
Farm Bureau
Libby
building,
German
but they
and Abby
realized he meant
Williams.
the
Let's
CPS
bring
building,
our legal
because there
analyst
is no
back
Farm
in,
Bureau
Lindsey
building
Jackson.
right
Lindsey,
there.
Yeah.
again, joining us. She's
That
a
he
former
admitted the
deputy
time frame of
prosecutor
being there
and
from
a
1:30
current
to
criminal defense
3:30.
attorney.
Well,
She's been with
he
us every
then
day
tried to
of this
backtrack
particular
that with
trial.
the
So I
defense
mentioned the 4
later.
counts that Richard
Well, it
Allen has been
confirmed
found
he was
guilty
there
of:
because of the
felony murder
timing that the
and
3
murder.
girls
So
saw
those
him.
4 counts.
And
Tell our
if you
viewers
haven't
again
watched the
why
video
he
that
was
I
charged for felony
just did
murder
with
and murder
Paige,
in the deaths of
you
2
see
children.
how narrow
Well, there
that
are
Yeah.
there's a
um,
felony murder count
that
per young
trail
lady, as
is.
well as a
You guys
knowing
need to go
Yeah,
intentional
watch
murder
that
count
one if you
per young
haven't.
lady. So that's why there's
yeah.
4,
If you can
despite there
see
only
from
being
the
2
point of
victims.
view from the
And so the difference
witnesses
between the 2 is
how
there's knowing and intentional murder. And knowing and
how
intentional murder is
close
just that.
he would have
There's
been as
3
he
under
passed
those
those
charges is
girls.
that Richard Allen knowingly
And
and
he
intentionally
noticed
killed these
obviously
girls
3
without
of them enough
not
to
having to
tell
find
what
any
the color
particular
of the
reason.
one of the girls' hair
Indiana's not a
was.
state where they have to prove motive. They just have to prove that it was knowing and intentional.
And
On the
then,
other hand,
you know,
felony murder
he's
is
sitting
where
here
the state's theory is
um
that a person
getting
committed some other
confirmed
felony,
of the
and during the
time
course of
because
committing that
those girls were
felony,
out
the
there
girls
taking
died.
pictures.
So in this
The
case, the
police
state's
looked
theory
with
was
them
that
at their
even
phones
if the
to see
jury
what
believes
time
that
they were
Richard Allen
taking
was
those
only
photos
responsible for
right
kidnapping the
before
girls,
they
and
ran
the jury believed
into
that
Richard
kidnapping
Allen.
resulted in their death,
And
then
he
that's
was
enough to find
coming
him guilty of
in.
felony
He was
murder.
not
So
leaving.
they
He
agreed
was
with each of
walking
those theories. They
in
agreed that it was
from
knowing and
the Freedom
intentional,
Bridge
and they
side,
also
which we
agreed
showed
with the state
on the other
that as a
video.
result of that kidnapping, Richard Allen was responsible for that
So,
kidnapping, and
you
as a
know,
Yeah,
result
and
of
it's a
that
good
kidnapping, each of
it's a
those
good
girls died.
video as
We
well
heard our crew there at
because
Carroll County
the
tell us
way
that
you've shown it
the
when you've gone there
sentencing for Richard
yourself,
Allen
it
will take
shows how
place
close
in 1 month
together
on December
everything is,
20th.
like
And
how
we
short a
want to
distance
kind of
walk
get
it
your
is,
feelings on whether or not
you know,
this
how quickly it
sentencing
is
will
to drive there in a car.
positively.
It's a very, very good video.
What is your expectation, and what are the ranges in terms of the
Yeah,
sentence?
and we're keeping
So
this
it's a little
on
bit
because just
complicated,
in
but
case
just as a
any
basic
of the
understanding,
attorneys
each of the 4
come and
counts carry
say
a penalty range
anything,
from
or if the
45 to
prosecutor
65
would say
years.
anything.
Okay,
Although we
so
have to
that's
remember
just
that the
understanding the
next
range for
piece
each.
of
There's not a
this
difference
is
in the
going to
penalty
be
range
the
for murder
sentencing.
versus felony murder. And then
Yeah.
again, there's
And did
one
they say that'd be a month away? Is that correct?
charges for Libby. So in
Yeah, I think they
determining
said, which is not
whether to
necessarily
run those counts
unusual.
concurrently or consecutively, the
Um,
judge has to consider a number of things, a number of
but
factors
I would say
related to the
too that
facts.
the
So I think
other
in terms of just 2 sets of charges
part
in
of
general,
this, you
I
know, the
think we
other
can
part
expect
of
consecutive sentences. If you think about it just purely from a
everything
fairness
going on
standpoint,
is,
these were
you know,
2
they
separate lives
can't
that
really
were
let
lost. These were two separate
people
girls that
start
were
speaking
dying,
up
and they
quite
do not
yet.
deserve to
You
have
know,
these
I
cases
don't
be
know if the
heard.
judge
And I
would
think the judge will
release
likely
that
see it that way. So whether she
gag
was
Do you think
order
she might lift
before
it
the
sooner?
sentencing would
minimum
happen.
of 45
Do you
per
think
young
she
lady,
would?
with a maximum of 65
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I
I
don't
think we
think
will see
so,
that they will
I
have
honestly.
mean, it feels a little unfair to me though that like
these
the families as
those
well still aren't
charges
allowed to kind
and
of
that
speak,
there was
really.
separately on each of the 4 charges because they
Well,
had to merge
They've
together.
had to hold
So
in so much for so long, you know.
not being
oh
convicted
yeah,
twice for the same conduct, or not convicted
absolutely.
twice, but
But then
It
sentenced
again,
it
for the same
you know,
conduct.
I can't
So we won't see a
imagine
scenario
that
where
you
she
have
gets
so many
45 to 65
people
times 4.
I
It
see.
would be
who
45
have
to
said
65
so
times
much
2,
about the
meaning that
All
families
right, we'll get back to
and can
Katie and get more
continuously
legal
say
analysis
things
coming up.
about the
So we want to
families.
take you
yeah.
back outside the
And they
Delphi
can't
Um,
defend themselves,
and they
you
can't
know.
defend
and
themselves.
talk again
They
with Andy.
can't put up their own YouTube video and sit there and talk to you and tell you you're
But
talking shit. Like they can't do that.
Who
And
was
they should
in
be
the
able to if they
courtroom when
wanted to,
that
in my
verdict
opinion.
was read. We were talking about the
let's see.
family, the defense team. I mean, what were their
That
movements as they
Bob
were
Siegel was
coming
in the
in, waiting to
courtroom.
determine what was the panel's decision?
Yeah, it was about a half an hour from the time that that the media was invited into the courtroom. Richard Allen was already in the courtroom at the time. So was the entire prosecution team. Andrew Baldwin was there with his, hand on the shoulder of Richard Allen, trying to comfort him. The families were there of Abby and Libby. It was not until actually after the judge came back into the courtroom that we saw Richard Allen's family come in. And actually, Judge Gall was pretty frustrated. She wanted everybody right there. And she said, all right, we're back on the record. Where is Mr. Rosie? Andrew Baldwin said he's downstairs with the family. She said, let's get him up here right away. And as soon as they came into the courtroom, that's when the jury was asked to come in. And again, it was so fast.
The sentencing on
Literally,
December
I don't
20th.
think the jury was actually in the courtroom
Merry
for more than
Christmas.
3 total. And the judge immediately, as soon as the jury was seated, do you have a verdict?
Count one.
Foreman said yes. All right, we're going to read this. Count 1, guilty. Count 2, guilty. 3, 4, guilty, guilty. Polled all the jurors to make sure that was in fact their verdict. She said, thank you very much. The jury was excused. And again, 3 minutes, it was extremely fast.
And now presumably traveling, getting their items from where they've been sequestered at a hotel and moving back home to Allen County after having nearly a month-long of service for this trial.
Yeah. And Emily, from being in there almost every day as well, that usually while we're waiting for things to kind of get going, there's a lot of talking and chit chat
for
in
sure.
the courtroom. Today,
Not today, but
there was not a single word that was
So
uttered.
the
family,
December 20th
the
at 9
attorneys,
a.m.
The reporters,
Will
the
be the
30 minutes
sentencing
leading up
for
to,
Richard Allen.
during, and after. It was not until
Hello,
the judge left, but there
CJK.
you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom.
I felt like you could hear a pin drop the day of those closing arguments, when those closing arguments ended and the state had that rebuttal.
CJK, do you want to
talking
join
about,
us?
Think of this. Libby had told her grandmother that one day she wanted to grow up and help police solve crimes, and she did that.
I
this
can put a
time, and
link
she-
in here.
She brought her friend Abby to help her, and I remember that afternoon. It was very, very silent. Usually people would leave the courtroom kind of talking, and no one had anything to say that day.
I
either.
did
So I
put
thought that was
in
a-
our
a day
Discord,
as well, but
CJK,
obviously
a
today,
link
I can
for
see
the
where
StreamYard. So if you want to
Yeah,
click
mean,
on
just
it and join
processing
us up
everything
here,
that had just happened.
you are welcome.
Very, very solemn. After the verdict was read, the families
All
got to
right.
speak first if they wanted to. Immediately,
I
Defense Attorney
I
Judge
did think the
O'Shea
decision
went
at least
over
was
to the
announced pretty
Allen
quickly.
family. I
Because
saw
as
Kathy
soon as we
Allen's
heard
head
that the
buried
family and
in
everybody's
Miss
called
O'Shea's
back, then it
shoulder,
was like, boom,
as
they're
she was
in there.
crying,
And then the
family
court was
crying. They were
being,
trying to comfort the Allen
the court
family.
itself was
And
being
on the
let
other
out.
side of the aisle, on the other side of the courtroom, obviously much different emotions.
And everyone started
It was
lining up
a moment, I
outside.
think, perhaps one of the first moments of celebration that you could see relief and celebration on the faces of
Hello,
Abby and
Cindy.
Libby's family, and don't
We
get
had
me
to
wrong,
see
viewers.
this
I
to
mean,
the end,
it has been
and it's
hard
just
for these
emotional.
families to find
Um,
anything to
Yeah, I've
celebrate
tried to
after
make
this
how
people
long
ordeal
this has
that
been,
started
so many
7.5 years
years,
ago. But this was the verdict.
just
This was the day.
waiting to
This was the
find
moment.
out
These were the
and
words
praying
they were
for
waiting
these
to hear.
kids.
And today, those words came.
And, you know,
Maybe
there's a
the
big difference from sitting
Really,
outside
both of those families, I mean,
listening to
they,
other
you know, over
people
the years have
kind
done
of
things
cover
to
what the
try and
case
honor
is,
the girls. They built that
especially
beautiful softball park.
I don't
Both of
understand
those love to play
why
softball.
there's a
They
lot
built
of
that with
people
their faces up there.
who
They've held
listen
food
to
drives
people
every
who
year
have
at the
told
holidays
them
to come and donate food in
wrong
the girls' memories. So
information,
they have done what
um,
they could
not kind of
to
reported on stuff. I
honor their
understand
children's memories in the best way they
discussing
could,
both
you know,
sides
under
of it for
under very
certain.
difficult circumstances.
But there were
You know,
there
all those
were
years not
literally
knowing, not having a
people who were
suspect, then a break in the case, but
deliberately
then waiting for the trial. And so again, here we are. We keep saying
making
that
up
today is the day. Well,
information.
I think
And
it is interesting that you bring up that park because we did go out and visit that park
it's
really on the
it's
first day of
scary
the
to
trial
think
here. And you
that
really do get a
social
sense
media
of how many people came together to contribute time
could
and
be an
resources to
effect
create
on a
25
trial
acre facility,
so much.
amphitheater, and bricks with
And
yeah, and that's
messages.
why
I
things
mean,
need to
from
come
the
into play for
standpoint of
that.
people
Pictures
releasing
there. The day that we were there
uh,
happened to be a day very similar to today, perhaps less windy,
releasing the
but young
photos,
families out there
crime
on
scene
the
photos of
swings,
those
on the
girls.
slides, having a
Hmm.
place to come together.
And
And I
honestly,
It's
during the
pointed
trial
out to
itself,
me
we
that, you know,
addressed that,
once that we've
you know,
built this
Becky
park in
Patty
their
had an
honor,
issue
the
with
work continues. I mean,
why
there's still
can
maintenance and
the
there's still
autopsy
we still need to go
photos
out
and the
there, and
crime scene
that
photos
has in a
be
way
shown in
been some
open
healing
court,
for the people
open
that
to the
have
whole
donated their time and
gallery of the
resources that when they go
courtroom?
out there
But then
and
Richard
they help
Allen's
clean it
videos
up and
could
help
not
maintain
be,
that park,
and that
then
they
they
would
are
only be shown
honoring Abby
to
and
the
Libby and making
jury
sure that
and to
there
the
is a
others,
place
just
that
to keep
Yeah,
him
represents
from
their mother,
embarrassment
their love,
of
and
his
make sure
behavior,
that
as well as
those girls,
him
they would be 20
being
now, they would
nude,
be 20, you know,
and
like
doing
in
that.
college.
yeah, and he was willingly nude. He was willingly doing whatever he was doing to himself in those videos.
The years talking with the
Abby
police during
and
the
Libby, you know, they weren't the way they were willingly. They didn't want to be that way, and they didn't want to be seen that way, I'm sure. And I know obviously the families didn't want to see them that way either. So
No.
everyone did who was there.
So for them to be a
And
part
then
Well,
of
if
that,
you
some
can
sick
show a
individuals.
photo of
their
a
daughters and their
underage
sons and
girl
build that park so that other children could come
nude and
enjoy,
murdered at a
and
crime
and
scene,
Abby and Libby
why does he get
looking for
not
this
to be shown?
line
I don't
for
understand
sure
that.
in a very
Also,
devastating,
I'd like to say, if you
crime
are
case
someone on
that
social
desperately
media
deserves
that
to
shares pictures of a nude
7
girl at a
So
crime
that's the
scene,
latest here
you
from
should also
Delphi.
have
Scott, we'll
charges.
send it back to you. We have Samantha Johnson here,
Underage
and
nude
she's on the
girl,
other side of the
no.
courthouse, and she has some information now.
Let's see
Sam.
if there's anything.
Well, Anne Marie, we have heard from time and time again throughout this entire trial the presence of the girls, right? Abby and Libby, we can see it on the buildings, the ribbons here around us, the blue and
Those
purple
are
ribbons
all over the
representing
place.
the
They're
girls' favorite
beautiful.
colors. And when that verdict was announced just a few minutes ago, these sidewalks were filled with people who were crying. Some of them were cheering out of excitement. They called it justice for these two girls' families. We heard from one gentleman, his name is Tim Harper. He lives here in Delphi. He was very vocal the moments after that verdict came down. Listen to what he had to say.
Tonight we'll be able to go to sleep knowing that we're all safe again, knowing that we can ask and look at one another again in the hands of love and help. The man is now going to be put behind bars for what he has done. And I believe that he is remorseful, but we don't want the remorse. We want justice. And today was the day. And we thank the Lord for everything and all of our officers and our hard duties and work. Everyone has put so much effort into this. The love and care that everybody has showed right now, loving one another and the care of not even protecting him. He's not the victim. They were the victims. And we were victims also with it. We want to be released just as well as Abby and Libby. They're free now. They are free. And again, today is their day. And we've been saying it for years. Endless nights of sleep. We can now say that this is justice. Finally.
So so much emotion here outside the Carroll County Courthouse. I can tell you within really the last few minutes, it's really started to quiet down. A lot of people, like we mentioned, just here to see and witness that verdict. And then now they've kind of left the downtown Delphi area. But Scott, this is really just the beginning of what we saw today, what we heard today. And of course, there's much more.
You know, and that's what it is. The whole town
All right,
just
Samantha
changed,
Johnson,
period.
Continuing our live team coverage in Carroll County outside the Delphi Courthouse. Thanks. We'll get back to you, and we'll also get back to our crew, including Emily Longnecker, Bob Siegel, and Anne Marie Tiernan, who
It's
are
just,
going to be covering this trial throughout the evening.
I
If you're just
really
joining
feel
us here on
like, you know, they're
WTHR
talking
and
about
across our
a
social
you know,
media
mentioned
platforms,
about
Richard Allen
a
was
law
found guilty by a jury of his peers today of
that
the murders
they would
of these
not,
two young girls 7.5
about
years
crime
ago,
scene
Abby
photos
Williams
and
and
stuff
Libby
like
German,
that being
who
released
were
out on social media.
who were killed
But
after going
I
out
don't
for a
know that
walk.
this won't
The 14
change
and 13-year-old girl. We
eventually,
always bring it back to the
you
fact
know,
that this
things
is
about
all
social
about
media,
these two
because
young
we do know
teenagers,
that,
Abby and Libby. And what a
you
hero
know,
Libby was
regardless
by
that
having
not
the presence of
anything
mind while she
specifically
was on
happened
that
to
Monon
the
Bridge
defense
to bring out
attorneys,
her cell
it
phone
was
and
due
to
to
start
Baldwin
recording this
that
person that was walking across the
Westerman
bridge
got
that
those
was
photos
making these two girls nervous. And the
and
fact that
got
these
those
girls
photos
were able
out,
to
and then
preserve
people
that
were
evidence
showing
for these
and sharing
detectives
those
and
photos.
investigators to find the person that today was found
And then
guilty,
the thing
is
is,
really something.
first
And
of
I
all, I
must
don't
also
agree with
say
that.
that I'm certainly hopeful that the jurors in this case and the families
I
are going
don't
to be
agree with
speaking
it,
because of
but
what they saw
at
during
least
this
if you're going to
trial. And I
show
want to bring in our legal analyst again,
their
Steve
photos,
Lindsay, because
they were
the reason I bring
they
this
were
up is
trying
that
to
during this
influence
trial,
what everybody
the
is
jurors
seeing
and
in those
families,
Well,
photos.
saw
and
these
think
girls
about, JSD, what happened recently. So on Twitter, or X as it's now called, somebody posted crime scene photos of the girls again
Right.
recently in the past days, and you got to wonder how they also got that info.
have now,
Now I know there's a lot of
the second
people
or third time
who
that
may
we've seen that. That is
follow go watch all the
crazy.
millions of channels that show
For sure,
Delphi.
absolutely.
I
We've
know
done
for
this work
myself,
for a
before
long
I had
time.
my own
Those are not
channel,
things that
I
you
sat
can
there and
unsee. They're things that
watched
I've
some.
carried with me
And then,
into my
you know,
career
there
as a
were
defense
some that
attorney
were
to when
sharing
I
certain
worked on
information or weren't sharing
trial these
certain
cases as a
information.
defense prosecutor.
And then,
it
you know,
is
there's some, like, as soon
difficult.
as you get
In
on
terms
there,
of the
I mean, the
family,
ones that
the
really
wonderful thing is
pissed me
that there are
off
resources
were
that
that
we
this
can
family
update
couldn't speak
for
up, that
families
there
who
are
have been
channels who are
victims of violent
accusing the
crime.
god
I have
dang
no doubt that this
family
prosecutor's
in
office has
this
connected
murder.
them
They're
with
trying to
advocates. And
accuse
believe it or not, a lot of the
Kelsey,
times the families say,
her
"Who would have
sister,
gotten warning
her
that these
teenage
photos were going
sister,
to be shown and when," right?
of
And they say,
Like,
"I need to
being
see that.
involved in this
I need to
stuff.
be in that courtroom.
yeah,
I need to see
and
the girls."
You
everything that
know,
they have said is wrong
But you
and
can't unsee
truthful,
the
no
right?
fact, no evidence, and it's just bullying on another level. It's disgusting.
Available in their local prosecutor's
Yep,
office. It gets a
yep.
little more difficult with the jury
And
because
it
they
shouldn't
And
be
know
remember,
allowed.
we
And I
had a
hope
bunch of
something
times that,
happens.
they
you
sacrifice
know,
a month
Richard
of their
Allen
life
kept saying
to
he
serve
wanted to
justice. And we did
confess.
that today.
He
And
kept
now they have
saying
to
that he
go out
wanted,
and they have
you
to
know,
deal
he
with
was
that.
right
And
with
there
God.
aren't
He wanted to
resources
confess.
that are directly
Remember, he
available
filled
to
out
jurors.
that
They aren't
paper
sent away with
in
a
August
pamphlet
that
or
he
a
wanted just
1-800
a
number
quick
that they
trial
click
and all
on
that, and they end up
in
going to
order
the
to cope
Supreme
with the
Court.
aftermath of
And
having even
and they're
finished a
trying to
difficult
say, oh,
decision,
well,
right?
look, he asked
And
for
so
a
that's maybe a
fast
flaw or a
trial.
challenge in our
And it's
system,
like,
and
well,
maybe this
okay,
case in
but you never
particular
filed
will
this for
shed some
him.
light on
Why,
that issue.
you
So I
know,
would
you
hope
can't
that you'll have the
argue why he didn't
necessary
get a
resources.
quick
And I
trial
will
when
say
you
this,
never
they did
filed
happen
it.
to reach out
And then after
to
that,
any
it
of the
was
parties
delay
involved with
tactics on
this
the
case, and
behalf
they
of
were
the
able to at
defense
least
team
point them in the right direction in
to
terms
keep,
of
you know,
coping with the aftermath
filing
of the
stuff, to
heavy
delay and
One of
delay
the
and delay
stories that we'll be
further.
pursuing, of course, is talking with these jurors, if in fact they ever want to talk
And, you know, there
about what they
is
saw and what were the
so
tipping points,
much,
if you will, in finding Richard Allen guilty on all 4 of these
you
counts.
know,
Judy and I have been talking over the last hour or so about
certain
the
channels out there,
confessions that Richard Allen
and
made while he
and
was in
I
prison.
I don't get
Perhaps
it. I don't get
wondering,
it.
were those
They
confessions
go
that he
out.
made to the warden
Some
and to
channels
the
are into
psychologist
drama.
and to his wife and to his mother,
Some
were these the
channels are
things that,
into
that really brought the
bullying.
jury over to say, no, this guy is capable of doing this? Or was it
you
something
know,
else? Because there were
here's
other
the
pieces of
thing.
evidence,
We
Katie, along the
very
way
much tried that
that
anytime
the
we would
state
cover
brought up and
anything
that
at
the defense
all,
brought up
it was
that
going to
made
be
it made
about
everybody kind of wonder, is this
what
the
we
guy?
would
Because
know is
remember,
a
they didn't
fact
have
that
any
they came
DNA
out.
evidence.
And
Well,
when
yeah.
we did the video the other day, by the way, I even went through that evidence and I said, as a juror, I need you to forget everything that you already know and heard and know what happened and know what didn't happen, and forget that and pretend this is the first time you heard the case. And that even if you throw out the bullet, even if you throw out the bullet, I think there was still a good case, because what could replace that bullet
Sure.
is
And,
the
you
white
know, we
van.
talked about throughout our analysis of this case throughout the trial that a
Hmm.
lot of
And
those
yeah, I was going to ask you
ways
what new info that we learned in this trial did stand out to you the most?
but
And
there
I
was
think you just
no
answered
evidence
it.
to any other
Well, that
unknown
was the
male
shocker.
that
Yeah.
I mean, that was the
identified. We have the
shocker. I mean,
Boston
and
suspicion.
honestly, that was a
We have
shocker for
DNA
the
from an
police.
unknown male,
For
but
them,
Richard
right.
Allen
another
gave that
forensic
to the
analyst that worked
police.
in the crime lab because there was some cross
Richard
contamination.
Allen
Yeah.
is the one
So
during his
again, it's one of those things that
confessions
works both ways, and we have to
stated
be mindful of
to
that
uh
trial attorney on either
stated
side.
about the
You know,
van, how
if
he's
it would not have
interrupted.
done, I
And
don't
you know,
think, and
here's the
I'm
thing,
sure
I
the
think
defense
that's
did
the
argue this,
most
but they
disturbing
couldn't
for me, and I don't
challenge
know
any
how much
shots that
everybody's
Richard
thought
Allen's
about
DNA
this,
wasn't there because
but
no one's
so
DNA
you
was there,
have
right? And so to some
Brad
extent,
Weber's
that was a warning.
vehicle,
Now, what
his
they did
white
challenge,
van,
and I thought
when
effectively,
he's coming home
was
from
the
work.
science behind the bullet.
He's
Again,
coming up the private drive that goes
science that is not
underneath
extremely
the
reliable
Monon High
because
Bridge. We
the
show that in the
analysts
video
compared
we did
apples
the
to
other day.
oranges,
Exactly
as
where that is,
the
exactly what the
defense
stuff
expert
looks
said as
like
it
for the
related
witnesses.
Yeah.
to
But
Yeah.
when he's going under there, so he says,
a
oh, he
bullet that had
gets
never been
spooked,
fired.
and he,
And so
again, he
it seems
uses the
ultimately the jury
specifics
absolutely
of
weighed
it
all the
being
evidence because
a
they were
white
for a long
van,
time.
that it
This wasn't a
spooked him.
verdict that came in
So
on
he
Thursday.
made
He's
the girls
interested.
It
cross
didn't come in
the
on
creek.
Friday. It didn't come in
Well,
on
then he
Saturday. And so they
says
really took
his
their time.
intention was
So
only to
we
rape them.
have to
He
assume
makes
that
the
the
girl
tipping
goes
point had
across
to be
the
those
creek.
confessions,
Right.
And
which
then
is
while they're
Mhm.
across the creek, the phone stops
really
moving
hard to wrap
at
your mind around
2:32
when you think
p.m.
about the fact that they
Well,
didn't even
here's
have
the
those
thing.
confessions when they charged Richard Allen.
Why
So, but for those
was he
confessions,
there
where would we be
for more
today,
than an
right?
hour
But I
with the
think
girls?
ultimately that was the compelling evidence because all of those
Well,
witnesses
you
lied
know, I had a thought,
lack of DNA.
and we know
Inside
in his
like
behavior in the video, apparently, where he is,
the bullet,
I'll
it's
say it,
hard to say that
masturbating
without the jury there. But
Yeah.
and
maybe
stuff in front of people, and you have to wonder whether he even maybe did something similar
Someone put
at the
something
scene
in the
or
headphone for
something that
several
maybe
Right.
wouldn't leave any
hours.
trace, you know, but
What
it's,
happened
you know, yeah,
there. So
and
anyway,
that
I
was
hate to say
partially
it, but
for the
you do
defense
have
of
to
the crime
wonder,
that
we'll hear more from Katie. in a
or
moment. Let's get
Well,
back
but
did
if
the
he
actual,
got spooked, why is he there for a whole nother hour?
All right, Scott, you know, we do have a lot of questions about
but
what was
and
the
another
jury,
thing,
how
you
the
know, he
family
kind of
feels,
framed
what
it like,
the facts of
his
the matter
intention was
gag
to
order that was put
sexually
in
assault
place
them, rape them,
by
right?
that are closely
But
connected
then he made it sound like because he was interrupted and
2
spooked, he
years in
made
the
them cross the
making now,
creek,
and for it
which
to be
led to
listed
him
as
killing them. And it's like,
suppression
if that
order
wasn't your
judge
motive to
today
begin with, I'm pretty
that
sure
will
you
be
wouldn't switch up
continued
that quickly
until
to kill
December
them. Like,
20th. Now is not till December
it,
20th.
yeah, and he took the weapons with him,
Captain
you
Ron
know?
Galvez
Right.
about no
So if you're
comment in this
just joining
gag
us,
order,
Richard
and let's hear
Allen
what he has to
has
say,
been
and then we're going
found
to go
guilty
to Bob
of
and Emily for a little bit
all 4
more context
charges
about what
of
they can't
felony
talk
murder.
about, but there are some things
That
that
is
they
the
can.
piece
So here's
where
Captain Galvez first.
basically that
Judge,
they found that he was
gag order.
guilty. Let's see what
We're
this
not
said.
going to be able to make any type of public statement at this point. We'll be looking forward to having something scheduled a month from now following sentencing. So with that, that's all that we're going to be able to say at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You can't talk about.
So they're all keeping their mouths shut from that.
All right, so pretty tight lit there from state police, and we're just having this discussion of like what can they and can they not talk about, because we have seen, let's talk about the family, that they have gone on social
But
media and they have made
you
comments,
have,
not specifically
if he
about
wasn't
the
planning on
evidence,
murdering
not
the girls,
specifically about what's
why
going on
does he
in
have the
court,
gun?
but
Why
about
does he have the
perhaps their
knife?
feelings
If he
and
got
their sense of
spooked,
loss or their sense
then
of
why
hope.
didn't, if he crossed
And
the
so
river,
we've
then
been
why
hearing
didn't he just
tidbits
take
like
off?
that, but you know, so it's
Right.
just interpretation of
he
what
still
can I say,
saw
what
the
can I
van go
not say.
by.
State
He
police
still
was
waited,
saying nothing.
and then he
Right.
turned
Well, and
around
correct.
and
The
then started
purpose of the
having
order is because
basically
either
Libby
want
get
to,
undressed.
you know,
Yeah, and it's evident that obviously Brad Weber didn't
you know,
even
jury
see Richard
functions
Allen and the
are
girls.
it's to be,
He just
you know,
noted that he was driving home on that road at the time.
about, you know,
Right.
And
they're
that
going
coincided
one way or
obviously with
another.
what
I'll be
Richard Allen
honest, right
eventually
now,
stated.
the sentencing is completely
So that's
hands
how it
off.
matched
If there's
together.
one
That's
thing
what
we
the
know
police
about
needed.
Paul,
That's what they said.
easily
They didn't know that info until he said it, and then when they
I'll
spoke
be honest, I am
to Brad
surprised
Weber, they realized that he was that guy.
that order would continue because
The Richard Allen
the
saw,
families, after all these
but
years, have
it's
been
obvious he didn't see him. So
I know they say
how is
so.
he that spooked, like you just said?
Yeah, I mean,
You know, he kind of saw the vehicle,
there's going to be
but I feel like that was maybe his intent anyway, to go over to that private area. But I think maybe his intention was to sexually assault the girls there under the bridge, possibly. Like maybe he started doing things there like he wanted to, but his motivation was to always take them across the other area to do the rest of his,
We've been here kind
you
of on
know,
lockdown the whole time. I haven't
plan.
checked social media lately to see what's been
Because,
tweeted
yeah,
about.
still
I
no doubt in my
know,
mind that this is premeditated in every way. So,
Facebook over the years, nothing, you know.
Well,
nothing
I mean,
very
that's
long
just the thing.
statements
He
or
had an
anything like that,
opportunity to
nothing that
walk
some
away
would say would violate the gag
before
order,
the
but,
girls were
more than
murdered.
once.
I would imagine,
More than once,
I would
right?
imagine, like you
Because
both pointed out,
he
there
passed
will
the three
be
witnesses, technically
some
four, right?
acknowledgement of the
And
Yeah.
actions today by the families, at least
that in itself, you know, maybe could have spooked him, you know, if he was the type to maybe be spooked and change his mind.
to this point,
Seeing those other girls, he would be like, you know, there are other girls around, other people around. He's then stood on the bridge and Betsy Blair sees him. He does turn around, look at her, and, you know, kind of turn around again. Again, would that not plant a seed of doubt in his head that, you know, maybe there's too many people that have seen me already? And then he goes down the hill with the girls and he gets interrupted by that van. So another scenario where he could have been seen even with the girls at this point, because he doesn't know if that person in the vehicle has seen him with the girls.
you have to
So
imagine
then to go on and kill them, and instead of just wash your hands of it and leave,
the
is
prosecution
just absolutely crazy. So I
hard
think it
they've
puts
been
you in
working
a
on
state
this
of mind
case
that
for
he must
years
have been
now.
in.
The defense team
Nothing was stopping
believes
him from
in
doing
their
what he
hearts
wanted
that
to do.
Richard Allen is
And
not guilty.
yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I feel from what we know now. Yeah.
I feel like the stuff that we're still trying to figure out, you know, the stuff that I hopefully we get more answers to. You know, because we have where you know, that like are we going to find out who the hell ever, for instance, who put cleared on Richard Allen's file?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've talked about that. If Richard Allen, you know, it didn't get enter into the Orion system, right? Doesn't get entered into the Orion system,
It
yet
wasn't written down
somehow
correctly.
he has
Yeah.
it. He goes, he says he turns it in. It never gets entered into Orion. Okay, then somebody still had to touch it and see it. And if somebody touched it and even marked that he was cleared, wouldn't have they corrected what his last name was and what the
Like if they
name of the street was?
if they actually looked into it, because think about it, like you said earlier, that detail from Dan Doolin did also have that follow-up about the three witnesses, those three girls, right? That was a follow-up question. So if that was given to anyone, was that wasn't followed up on either then? So it was just, it looks like not even looked into. It was just brushed off and stamped as cleared.
Yep.
And it's just strange when you think about, not to talk too much because I know you're going to do a video on it, But when you think about the timing, I won't talk too much. But no, when you think about the timing of when Richard Allen spoke to Dan Doolin, and then the timing of when Kathy Shank came into, the investigation to volunteer and go through all of these tips, she did not come across it in those early days when they wouldn't have been as much volume.
Right.
That's one thing to think about, guys. Really strange.
Well, that's just it. I mean, you're just like, somebody had to touch it to mark it cleared.
Precisely.
And then, but if
And it
somebody
wasn't
did
her,
see it cleared, what the hell?
yeah, and if it wasn't her and it wasn't Dan Doolin, then who the hell else saw it between them? Who else touched it? Like you just said, who marked it as cleared? That's what we're gonna try and hopefully find out eventually.
So what other things do you think that hasn't been answered, that we still need answers for?
My God, I feel like there's still a lot of things. Like, I feel like we have learned so much, like compared to, say, when you first did a YouTube video on Delphi, Like we
Yeah.
were talking about the timeline you did before, putting together the puzzle pieces, and a lot of it is still absolutely accurate, but the little fill-ins of information that we've had even since then, and I think it was only a year ago, is crazy. But yeah, I do feel like even though we've had some answers, I do still have quite a few questions.
I think that obviously, that the way that it was said of when Richard Allen is standing on that first platform, right?
Mhm.
And he is seen.
Yeah.
And it said, well, he looked back and then he looked away. And it was stated he looked back but he was waiting for somebody else.
Yeah. I think she said like he was expecting someone, but it wasn't me.
Right.
Like he obviously knew. Like I think you can kind of tell. Like I think many of us have been maybe in a situation where, even when someone will kind of almost wave at you because they think you're who they're waiting for and you're not, and then they kind of embarrassingly like look away from you. But in this scenario, he was obviously waiting to do something very sinister. So yeah, I imagine his expression is probably something quite like this in this picture, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think you would be able to kind of tell and imagine what she means by this and why she came to the conclusion of the way he was behaving and why it made her think he was expecting someone and he wasn't her. And he very clearly was, so she's correct.
Well, I think the other part of that is because he rushes by the first teenage girls that we know times it. The girls he also testifies that he was seen by, because he had to. And we revealed that this is right after the picture was released, not the video. So it was only when we want to speak to this person in the video. I mean, think about all the other scenarios where he didn't come forward. So if he sits here, he knows what he's wearing, he's got that. Suddenly the video is also being shown, right? Suddenly we've got the photo that's being shown. He comes and says he sees these girls and stuff. Well, and you brought up a great point the other day, Paige, when you and I were talking. In 2019, Doug Carter comes out in that and he says, okay, the car that's parked at the CPS building. Well, if you're the car that's parked out at the CPS building,
why didn't you come forward again?
Why did he not say, oh, hey, that is my car. That was my car.
Yeah.
And them to realize they haven't identified him. And that's why Kathy Shank, who worked for Child Protective Services and stuff from that, the volunteer who was helping them, enter all of these tips and stuff. And the video that I did back when I was trying to figure out, okay, how did this tip that Dan Dolan got, and this was back then, I was trying to figure out how would that
It was
slip.
like immediately after we learned about
Right.
this.
And I
with
showed the
Alan.
Orion slips, what's used by law enforcement. And can I talk a little bit about the cases, like the Tinsley case in Fort Wayne? The Orion system was used for that, and that's how they solved that cold case, was because they went into the Orion system. They started entering this information. The Orion system then for law enforcement pops out potential suspects. Well, back then, the video I said then was, okay, well, is it because they were thinking he was more of a witness at the time? What did they put it down as that he's a witness and whatever? Well, then with everything we find out by Dan Dolan's testimony, Kathy Shank's testimony, it was never even entered in Orion's system. Never. And that not only she finds it in a box in a drawer, but she finds it that says cleared on it. Who the hell wrote cleared on it? How can you write cleared on it with that information?
Yeah. And like knowing if that was looked at properly, the way it was supposed to, he would have been found guilty a lot sooner.
Well, what irks me is he would have been found guilty. He would have been found at all, period.
Right,
Very early
right.
on.
And imagine what they could have had 7.5 years ago. They would have had his phone at least. And I know he's been found
Exactly.
guilty, but imagine what more we could have known.
Well, and the other pieces that were gone were the evidence, right? The items that was taken from the scene of the girls.
Right, still missing. Yeah, never recovered.
And
The murder weapon, knife. not
well, and that's
recovered.
the other thing. Let me see what CJK wrote here.
They did recover the gun though. Woohoo.
Right, CJK. I mean, that's the point. It never got filed. It never got filed. It never entered in the Orion system. It never got filed. And it never was seen by Kathy Shank, who is putting this stuff, gathering all of it and putting it in there.
In like a couple of weeks after, right? This happened. She was appointed and she never came across this tip when she was going through so many more.
But
And she
yet
never
he
found
was
it.
there days. He called even the day before he was there.
Yeah, the 16th he called. No, sorry, the 17th he called, and then the 18th he was interviewed by Dan Dolan outside the Save-A-Lot.
And if you remember, I mean, Dan Dolan makes the comment, well, I never thought about him again. What?
How could
You live in Delphi. Every minute of the day has been about the Delphi murders. And then you never, ever thought about a man who seemed not willing for you to come over to his house. Well, if he told Kathy Allen, then why is he worried about Kathy Allen being there? And he's worried, he doesn't want you, he doesn't want to meet you at the police station. Well, why is that? Because he doesn't want somebody to recognize it from the photo or video?
The police station and his work and the Save-A-Lot are in very close proximity.
And we showed that in the last video we just did.
Yeah. So he could have just
saw how
easily
close.
walked
It was
into that
nothing.
police station. He could have stayed at work. Why did he make him go to that Save-A-Lot parking lot? Because he wouldn't be seen by co-workers, people he may know necessarily talking, about this.
So either somebody else grabbed this paper that Dan Dolan had, read it, didn't get them to enter it, and just wrote cleared on it, or Dan Dolan wrote cleared on it, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the two.
someone either really just didn't do their job or someone purposely didn't do their job. You know what I'm saying?
Well, even if you wrote cleared on it, that his notation still marked about the 3 girls who saw him.
Yeah, so they didn't follow up on that. And I would be interested to know if we would ever find out when law enforcement did actually find out about those witnesses and when they did talk to them. Like, I think they did say it was quite early on. Am I right? I can't
Well,
remember.
yeah, they very early, even after that, like it wasn't even with just a couple of days. It was still later on.
Right.
They encouraged anybody at all that was on
Right.
the trail that day whatsoever, you were asked to go talk to contact law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
that's
so
the other
great.
thing. I mean, that
Remember
he's
that.
contacted for law enforcement, but yet he's meeting Dan Dolan. Why would you not go to the police station?
Well, you know, they did kind of word it as though Dan Doolin was like appointed to go and talk to Richard about the phone call he made, you know? But I think you are correct, though. Dan Doolin did call him and, you know, say, you know, I want to talk to you about what you called about. And he should have been very stern in, you're going to meet me at the police station, you know? And if he refused that, then that should have been a red flag. And it wasn't. Even though he states it now in his statement to the court that he did find it suspicious that, you know, Alan didn't want to meet at the police station or his home, he still didn't report that at the time to anyone that he found it suspicious.
Yeah. Well, and CJK, it wasn't even filed as a tip. Even if it's a tip, everything in Orion system is entered there, no matter what it is.
Yeah, so
So
it's
no
like,
matter what officer takes it, Orion system itself is used for large
by the
cases, for like
FBI.
the DC sniper case it was used for, the Tinsley case it's used for.
Yeah.
And
And
that
we
way, when
know,
you have multiple agencies that are working on a case together, the reason
yeah,
that they use the Orion system is because a bunch of them are
yeah,
trained to go enter
yeah,
the information into Orion, and then they go in there and then they pull out
yeah,
tips that will literally come out of the Orion system as potential suspects or potential things
yeah.
that they're getting.
And we
So,
know that the Orion system was being used like immediately as well in the investigation by them, because law enforcement did hold that press conference at the trails. They explained that Orion has literally been with them, you know, very early on, that they've been working with them. So we know that there's no reason for this from Dan Doolin to not go into Orion.
right. And so that's the problem. No matter what it was, it should have been entered in the Orion system, even if it was just a tip. And if they would have put the tip in there, it would have pulled him up right away. It would have pulled up that he was there on the trail during the murder. It would have pulled
Yeah.
up that he saw the 3 girls who they've
And you
been
know,
going around forever trying to figure out who those girls saw, especially the one in
you
particular.
you just
Who,
made me think as well, like early on, I'm pretty sure Tony Liggett like said that, you know, he wouldn't say anyone is cleared. He'd say that I can't remember the word he used now. Um, Covered. He said that he would class people as covered, you know, but he would never class anyone as cleared. So it's just so interesting that, you know, Richard Allen was really listed as cleared. Um,
yep.
I don't know. Yeah, it just popped into my head. I just remember him saying that, you know, he wouldn't say anybody was cleared.
So if you're just joining us, Richard Allen has been found guilty on all 4 charges, 2 counts of felony murder, meaning kidnap that led to their murder, and 2 counts of murder. The beginning of this video, we show people exiting the courthouse. It was a very quick announcement that Judge Gull called everybody in, and They asked the foreman if the foreman they've made a decision, and it was read. And then basically that was it. The scheduled sentencing of Richard Allen will be on December 20th at 9 a.m. The gag order has not been lifted, and the judge is the one who has to do so. And part of that issue also is because they have to go to the sentencing. And so part of that's going on as well. And I would throw this out here. Part of my point of talking about Richard Allen saying he laid in wait, he passed those other girls, he passed Becky Blair. Becky Blair says he looks like he's waiting for somebody else. He turns around, kind of looks at her, and turns back around. So
And can we talk?
if there's
Sorry.
anybody, because here's the thing, he went out there at a very specific time. He's rushing out there to be at the bridge at a very specific time because the girl said that he passed with purpose. Again, the video, if you have not seen it that I did, it shows how narrow the trails are. You're so close to the person that you have to walk by. You kind of move over to the side when you've got more than one. The teenage girls, there were more than one of them. And it's very easy to pass somebody. And, if he's sitting there and they said he was moving with purpose, and to walk by that close to somebody. And I mentioned to you guys, when I'm on the trail, I saw several people walking on the trail, and each and every person who was walking by all said, "Hi, how you doing? Hello." And you just respond back. So when they said like he didn't respond, you know why they thought that was odd. They were so close to each other at the time. So here's my throw out speculation that could happen. I think the sentencing itself obviously comes down or whatever. And you've got the prosecution has to say, to what they think plus the count or whatever. And I don't know if this would happen in the front end or the back end of it, but if Richard Allen had anybody assist him to get the girls to the trail or know the girls are to the trail,
or anyone that had knowledge even after the fact that he did this and didn't come forward,
anything like that whatsoever, I think that they would offer to him that they would go for less of amount of some years. Obviously with both of those held, they could go after the death penalty, right? They could sit there and even go after the death penalty because he's been convicted of both of them.
That's another thing, with these type of charges, what would you say is a typical sentence for that? Would you say death penalty in Indiana? I mean, it happens there, so.
Well, and we went through that before. Both of those charges, if he just would have been charged with felony murder, that can have a death penalty because it depends what crime you're doing.
Right.
And remember, when I read that back then, if the crime was to try to sexually assault a minor that commits to murder, that would make it the death penalty. And then obviously just straight out murder can lead to the death penalty. So he was charged with both.
Yeah, so he is eligible there.
And that could be something, if does the prosecutor come back and say, we're going to go after the death penalty? Do they say anything to him? Hey, if there's anybody else involved, you need to tell us. And, we'll take death penalty off the table and give you life. I don't know.
Maybe.
But Remember, Doug Carter back then always said if there was anybody at all that had any knowledge of this, that they wanted to get people as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say this, we're waiting a whole nother month.
Yeah.
Another whole month. Although we do have to say this, remember the defense didn't want to be done yet. They supposedly weren't going to be done to the 15th of November.
Yeah, but then they rest their case.
Yeah. Hey, Faye. Faye, would you like to come up and yap with us about the case? I can copy.
Mm-hmm.
Today is the day.
And I was just thinking to myself, you guys, the amount of time that we've all sat here and looked at Bridge Guy's video, listened to his voice over the years, and I felt like it was Richard Allen since the day he was arrested, and since we've learned more. But now we can sit here and actually look at him and know that he is Bridge Guy. He's the man that we looked for this whole time. And
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah. Faye, I
incredible.
dropped a link there if you'd like to join us. Oh, thank you, Daisy. Hello, Nameless. Nameless Wonder. When we first got on and we waited and we heard it, I thought for sure I'm going to have an emotional breakdown. And I will say this, I still feel it. I'm still feeling it's there. You know what I mean?
You will, I bet.
I know. As soon as I get off of here, it's going to be
we're going to just bawl to each other probably for the next couple of hours.
Yeah, it's been so long. And we've had so many. I will say this.
Setback.
I have been grateful that like more things that were bad that were happening at the time ended up getting revealed, so that people who were doing harm to the case,
right,
she's got to find her other headphones, that they came to light, most of it. And I say this, and there's a lot of you who come over and may watch and not know what we're talking about. But there are some people and even some channels and stuff like that wanted to deliberately keep misinformation out there, lies and stuff out there. Some who were working directly with defense people.
Let's talk about Odin and Gum for a second. Can we all now agree how ridiculous that is? Thank you.
Now, we do know what's going to happen, so I will prepare everybody for it. You know what's going to happen is he's going to file for an appeal. He's going to file, his attorneys are going to sit there and file for appeal, because I'm going to argue this fact. As much money that was spent on the case, right? That was, that the county itself had to go and basically double the amount of money that was being spent on the case, which I think was near $4 million. And then a lot of good people out there, well, and some maybe not so good, but good people donated money for a defense that they were trying to convince people that Richard Allen wasn't going to have, versus that it was because receipts hadn't been turned in. That's the reason something wasn't in there. They eventually got the money and stuff they submitted for. But they asked for all this money for all these expert witnesses. Where the hell were all the expert witnesses? Where were they?
Yeah, are you all happy with their defense? You know, I wouldn't say so. So what did they do with that money? What the hell was it used for?
Well, exactly. I mean, because they had the you were looking up the bullet expert person that they had, and you saw that they posted, or did they
Oh my
announce
God,
it
yeah.
about the person that they brought up wasn't, what was it? They wasn't certified, or
Yeah, let me even talk about this for a second, because it's literally been what stood out to me the most and what I looked the most into, because I was concerned, you know, with the amount of people that were talking about the junk science, okay, with the ballistics. So when the defense did appoint their expert, you know, on what they thought about the ballistics, that person has not been accredited. The state's witness has, the state's expert has. Also, trying to think now. So yeah, the state told us, you know, in their closing argument, I believe it was, that defense's expert on the ballistics also made their assumption just based off the state's expert's report, and they concluded that that was all incorrect, but they never tested the evidence for themselves. And the type of markings that would be left on that bullet would be so microscopic, you know, you would need to test it correctly and look at it correctly in order to determine anything. And they didn't do that. And they also didn't even bother to write a report on any of their findings. They just sat there and just said why the state's was wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I mean,
that's
so
what I clung
I
to.
mean, that to me alone is shocking, because they had all that money that was donated by individual people, also in addition to what was given to them from Carroll County. So why would they have a non was it certified? Is that the word you use? Certified or accredited? Sorry, accredited. Accredited ballistics person testify. I don't understand that.
And they're allowed to do their own testing of the evidence, and they didn't even bother to do that. Like, how would you be confident in that? Like, that's just, you know, and if you're someone who doesn't look into it all, like in the beginning, when I did hear all of this, I was a bit worried, like I said, but when I looked a bit further, I realized that information. So it put it more clear in my head that they did not do their job there. So made themselves look a bit stupid, in my opinion.
So CJK said we were like in and out a little bit. Are we okay now, CJK? But I mean, that's what I just don't understand. You have all the money from Carroll County. You got the money from donations that was given to the attorney who was representing Baldwin, right? I don't know why his name is escaping me right now. But I think he's horrific. But he's, you know, so he raises all this money. Why would you not have the best of ballistics people out there to argue about the bullet? You have a non-accredited person. And then, you know, they sit here, and they were the ones who called Dr. Walla first. Dr. Walla was the defense's witness to talk about what kind of bad shape he is in. But then yet she's also talking about, well, you know, he was saying, you know, this, and he did confess to this, and I was telling him not to do this. And then, so they used her as a witness to say how, you know, how he's doing, but yet then they would argue with her at the same time.
Well, I'll make a point there, right? In something the defense did kind of do that the prosecution didn't in, I believe, like in the psychology, side of it, with the people that were talking to them on both sides. The state's one, Dr. Waller, apparently didn't go through certain mental health evaluation with him, and then the defenses did. I can't remember the exact terminology, but I did definitely see that as well. But again, obviously not enough, because I believe, with the timeline and stuff of events that happened with his confessions and with the timing of his psychosis breakdowns that they like to say, I do really believe that it was a kind of retraction on his behalf to retract everything that he admitted to and just, show that he's insane on some level.
Well, and remember, he made that comment of how do I prove I'm insane? What do
Yeah,
what do I do? How do I prove that I'm insane?
I think
You
it could
know,
have been a tactic as well, with the defense to say that his treatment obviously caused all of it, his behavior, his confessions, and they tried really hard to nail that one down. But we didn't see the videos. The jury did. So obviously what they saw made them come to the conclusion that they did today. So
exactly.
they didn't believe it either.
I mean, sitting here thinking if you think he's guilty or whatever, I mean, the other part is, I mean, what do you think about the defense team? I mean, were they even a good defense? I don't think they were, because I don't feel like they have been prepared, period, for any of this.
I like what I just gave them. That's the only thing that I kind of little bit give them credit for. And that's all. And it did nothing though. That person obviously didn't do enough for the jury to think what they wanted them to think. So it did show that, in my opinion, the state was much more prepared. Yeah, I found myself, throughout this entire process with the defense's documents that they filed, over and over, I have left myself like feeling very confused after reading them, feeling like I'm reading the same thing over and over. I say to myself, did I just read that? But it's not, it's a new piece of information, but they're literally saying the same thing. And I did kind of feel similar in the trial.
Well, I mean, partially you felt like you're reading the same thing because they kept filing the same goddamn things over and over again.
It's like they never had nothing sufficiently, like I was waiting for them to, kind of throw something out there, like the cat's out of the hat kind of moment. And I was just kind of just left like, really? That's what you're going to go with? Like, that's how I felt in, their theory, everything. Yeah, I don't think they did a good job, evidently.
I just think that part of the, issue is that, again, they don't have to prove who did something, right? They have to prove or just create a reasonable doubt. And the problem is that they didn't create a reasonable doubt when it came to, him being guilty enough. And I mean, part of the issue is I really thought that ballistics part they're going to go crazy on. But when you bring up somebody that they say this is a non-accredited ballistics person who they are paying to testify.
Yeah. Who didn't even test the evidence themselves, just made their own assumption, which you cannot do. Like, you have to look at this bullet in order to even come to a conclusion. So,
well, that was even for testimony about the whole Odinist theory. They sat here and, have the witness up there talking. She's talking about, oh, well, this and this and this. And then they're like, well, did you see this? And did you make this judgment beforehand? Well, she hadn't even looked at the stuff when she was already talking on television stations about it being Odinist stuff. She never even looked at the scene yet.
I also thought the defense would maybe focus on more trying to put doubt in jury's minds of him being Bridge Guy, him being in that video, him being that audio. And yeah, they, didn't, in my opinion. And obviously they they can't because it is him. But I thought they would at least try a bit more with certain things. And they, even their
Um,
theory about the girls being taken away for a period of time, but the phone doesn't show it because they're in a vehicle, even though they would have to get out of that vehicle and back, to the crime scene. That phone would have shown that because the phone clearly went with them. For them to be killed at the crime scene, like when searchers would have been there, it's just absolutely
well,
astonishing that
that's I
would
don't
have
even
been
know
there.
why they. I don't even know. I mean, it was for them to try to separate more.
Yeah,
At
but
the
it's like,
time Richard Allen was there to separate more in the
yeah,
timing that the girls were
but
murdered.
it's like they didn't even know enough about this case themselves to realize how stupid of a theory that actually is, and
I
how that
mean,
wouldn't
that
help
was
them in any way.
that for me was stretching it more beyond. That was stretching way more beyond because they
Yeah,
were
and
trying to now not just that somebody else did it. Oh my God, that's the easiest thing to prove. You're trying to make yourself and I'm just trying to say this as a defense attorney. Now you're trying to make yourself, you're not just proving
yeah,
you're trying to say it's multiple people. Okay, go into
hmm
go into why you're going to tell the jury this
yeah,
is why we think it had to be two people. No, then they go into, well, yeah, we think they were taken, they were kidnapped, and the phone was left there, and then they were brought back, and then
well,
this happened,
no,
and this
they
happened, and
they tried to say, this is what got it for me, right? They tried to say that the phone stopped moving because it was in a vehicle and it doesn't track, the movement in a vehicle. That's what they tried to say. But that phone would have had to walk from the crime scene into the vehicle, out of the vehicle to whatever location they took them to. And the phone got back to the crime scene. So it would have had to get back in that vehicle again and then back out to the crime scene. So they would have been
and
a lot more
and be
data.
exactly at the same place that the
Yeah.
phone stopped at 2:32.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
No, so
that's the
it's
difference. And
bizarre.
when you drive around, your phone automatically tries to pick up on
Yeah, where
different
you're at.
Wi-Fi while you're driving around.
Absolutely. And it would have shown they had the data of where they were when the video was being taken, right? It showed the data of where they were, the GPS location. And it's just like it would have at least shown on that Apple Health data more movement, and it didn't. And everything obviously shows that they were taken to that crime scene. They did not leave. They were murdered there.
Yep.
So it's just
For
bizarre that
anybody
that was
just
their
joining
theory.
us now, let you know at the beginning of our video, we were showing live outside the courthouse while family members and stuff were leaving. That we were waiting to hear and confirm what the verdict itself was. And it was that Richard Allen was found guilty on all 4 counts. 2 counts of felony murder, meaning kidnapping that led to the murder of the girls, and then murder itself of murdering both the girls. 1 count each of the girls itself. The sentencing will happen on December 20th at 9 a.m. There's still a gag order in place. So, and that's also mainly because, it leading up to the actual sentencing piece of this. So they found him guilty, and there was only one time that the jury came back and asked to see some additional information, and that was to listen to his interview with Holman, when he called him in for questioning, and they rewatched that video itself. And you know, and watch the actual bridge guy video. So I mean, it was a pretty quick decision when you think about it. For as long as they were sequestered, although way less during the time they thought it was going to be. So that was good for them because they, sat here and were supposed to go to the 15th of November potentially. The defense
and
did not get to call the Odinist people, which they're going to, of course, use and probably file for appeal following the sentencing of the case. And, that wasn't brought forward because of admissibility. And, they can't just go and make up a whole bunch of things from it, especially when the people that they're trying to blame, Brad Holder and some of the other family members and other friends of this person, they're sitting here and they're saying, well, these people are the Odinists who committed the crime. Well, the officers did have them that they were investigated. That was a piece of investigation early in 2017, but it was found that they had an alibi. And
a very solid one that Richard Allen never ever had.
He never did. He never had an alibi. The defense was trying to create an alibi because they were trying to shift that. At first, Dan Dolan claimed in his testimony that at first he was saying he was there maybe 1 to 3, and then he's like, no, I think it was 1:30 to 3:30.
But in 2022, he said 12:30 to 1:30.
Yeah, they was trying to cut it off, which doesn't make sense because he is seen just before 1:30. That's when he's seen by those girls entering the park from Freedom Bridge. And that's exactly the direction that he told, even after the fact, that he said when he got there, he parked and walked from the Freedom Bridge area down to that. Again, the video that we just did shows you what path he would walk, and shows you, everything from that stance of visually seeing it. If you're a visual person like I am.
His vehicle is as well one of the most damning things as well for me, and obviously for the jury, because we knew like his vehicle was seen, but the info we've learned now is that it was the only one registered in Carroll County between 2016 and 2017, and they very easily identified that as Richard Allen's vehicle. And the timestamp there obviously puts him there at the time, he tried to lie about. So there's so much.
And let me throw this out there because I might as well, because it's becoming closing in on this a little bit. I will tell you one thing that I did discover, which I find interesting. And I have the information and stuff from this, but I thought it was odd that they did not find anything inside his vehicle.
Yes.
However, I did find out, I don't know if I should name who the person is, but I'll just say this. A family member of Richard Allen's actually owned a PT Cruiser.
At the time. Yeah.
And this PT Cruiser was taken and was destroyed. I believe I saw 2000 when it was destroyed. I'll go look up the data stuff again, but they had one. So I find that interesting also, just because you remember that morning he said he went to Peru that morning to see his mom and stepfather. He's there. He says he leaves there, goes, buys a 6-pack of beer, drinks 3 of them. then which is your, I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I mean, he did share that he's an alcoholic. You don't drink 3 beers and end up wasted.
No,
Um,
wouldn't have
you
had
know,
that much of an effect on him, I don't think.
and then he decides that he is going to go out to the trail, goes home, bundles up, and hello, Jamie Hicks. Jamie Hicks, I'd love for you to come up here because I was bitching about people. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Oh,
Let me show this. Hold on. There you go, Jamie Hicks. Let's see. I see somebody backstage, but I can't tell who that is.
oh, might not be good.
Yeah, I can't tell. If you're trying to be backstage, if you could type in to confirm who you are, please. Yeah, I know it's not you, Jamie. It was before I saw you. I didn't realize somebody's in there. I also offered Faye, but Faye had to find different stuff. So it looks like it says maybe a Chris, but I cannot tell.
They're not in the chat. I have no idea who they are right now.
Yeah, I don't see a Chris in the chat. Hold on.
No. Post in the chat, Chris.
Yeah, I want to just verify who it is, and I don't have anything pop up there. So
Don't have the energy for an argument, you know? But I just
I'm
want to
sure Nameless Wonder. I'm sure they are. I'm
I
not
wanted
surprised by that at all. I'm not surprised by that.
I wanted to mention that what you just said, Nameless Wonder, because I've already seen them kind of explaining away the jury's decision by saying they just wanted to hurry up and finish it so they could go home. Well, they could have just as easily come to a not guilty plea then if they just wanted to go home, you know, and you put no credit in their hands by saying that also. Stupid, really. But yeah.
Well, and you know what? Those are the people who sat through this longer than anybody and physically got to see absolutely everything. And that's what I hope. I don't know with Judge Gull. That's what I hope happens, right? I hope that she sits here and lets evidence go in there. I don't like how she handled the case of the public getting information about it. You know,
Yeah.
I don't
Because
think that's good.
it still caused people to give misinformation, because if there are people, you know, around the world that can't tune in to these news reports and things that are happening from people actually witnessing the trial, they might just be going off someone on the internet who's giving them little tidbits of information, or you know, they think is accurate and true when it isn't. And we've even said ourselves, how many different news articles and sources did we go through just every day to learn accurate info of what happened that day? And the conflicting info we would get even from news reports and things is just crazy. So
Yeah.
I think that would have stopped a lot of these people being able to put out any info that's wrong, because so many people would be able to see it in real time and know that it's misinformation. It's not true. It's not what they just saw.
I mean, I you know, I mean, you got to think that's like even, shows and stuff like that? How do they get people to go watch it? Because they turn around and they'll, different, even just when you think of like true crime television shows, right? They're going to put the most salacious thing out there to get you to go watch it or whatever. And then half the time you go watch something and then it's not the hell what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
They didn't tell you anything. There really wasn't anything like what they said you were going to go in there for.
Yeah. And
What's
it's supposed to
different
be,
is when you're talking about a case, I think
yeah,
that's different with this, that it's live, right? We're like, it's live. It's not like another cold case we're covering and we're trying to get details and information for. It's
yeah, it's in
live.
real time, right?
And
But it's also the fact of like it's supposed to be true crime. So like if you're not gonna put your info out there and make sure it is accurate and factual, then what is the point? It's supposed to be truth.
right.
Yeah.
And
A lot of people just don't do that.
there's, when you sit here and we know that there were people who were talking to the defense team. And it really makes me think about, what laws and stuff may have to be changed because of that reason. Because here's the other thing. When the defense had a gag order just like everybody else. So they're not supposed to be yapping or telling or leaking or getting this information and stuff out here and there about what's going, what their theory is, what's going on from that. I mean, we saw that happen just in, from the very beginning, the very first Frank's hearing. Right? I mean, they went and said, "Oh, we're not going to cover this in the media," and they went downstairs and then talked to the media. Then they wrote a press release. We
And they
showed
never
that
stopped.
they did it instantly.
Yeah, and the police said it was a continuous leak of information that happened, not just one event, a continuous. So I don't think they stopped. And we've all heard, a literal YouTuber was sat there with them, on the defense's side. And yeah, you got to wonder where they got a lot of their theories from, too.
Well, and the other part of this is also that that doesn't mean that something's not going to possibly be potentially charged against defense attorneys. And if I say that, I don't mean, honestly, I really don't think Rosie as much as Baldwin. But when you have that happen, even though Judge Gull didn't find that, anyone, including the prosecutor, can file stuff for review by their licensing, by what they did and all that kind of stuff. So that could still be something that could end up happening and going further. I mean, I was a little surprised that Westerman had the stuff dropped on him because he did sit here and expose freaking crime scene photos.
Yeah.
I mean, but part of the reason is he was being charged criminally for taking those. And then remember, I did a show that showed that later on, Baldwin changed his story and then now was claiming that, oh, well, Westerman was working with us. He was working with me on the case. Well, no, you said he got them off, not to your knowledge.
Yeah. And for a defense attorney, he's not a very good liar, is he?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
But honestly, he may have said that to cover his own ass more so than he's covering Westerman's. Because if Westerman comes and says, well, he's the one who told me to take him, he's the one who gave him to me, or whatever he could have said, then, if Westerman is doing him a favor, I mean, and that screwed up Westerman's life. He had a whole bunch of shit that went down after that too. But, you know, it is amazing to me of people who were during trying to find the person who did it, during waiting for the trial to do it, people accusing the family, accusing, you know, the sister, which just blows my mind, period. Oh, I see Jamie. Hold on here.
You know what makes me happy about Kelsey?
Hello,
She had a
Jamie.
baby.
Hi guys.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
We were just bitching about, you know, all the people who were still spreading lies, even as we were waiting for the case and stuff in there, little bitty lies about bullshit, just to try to sway people one direction or the other still, of, you know, that
Yeah, like we've been doing the whole damn time.
yeah, I mean, and like one of them was that that was told, I guess, that a juror was listening to a testimony, and that the juror was like, oh, well, let them finish talking. And then it was like, no, it wasn't a juror who did that, it was Rossi who did that. But they're trying to make it sound like, oh, well, even the jury knew that, let the defense team's person speak.
Yeah, see, I agree with Paige when it comes to being so hard on this jury, because we all can sit back and think, okay, we could be called as a juror one day, you know, and make the right decision, and know in our hearts we're making the right decision, and then they're having this wave of people attack them.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
what's scary
just think
is
of how
they
hard they
trying
were
to
on the Casey
identify
Anthony
him.
jury.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Yeah, and with this case is how we've seen a lot of people who do talk about Delphi, you know, like we've mentioned, the way they do talk about it and the stupid theories that they have come up with, it's mostly them people as well who have tried to spread more lies.
It is a group of people for sure. You know what I have to say about this earlier? You know, all stuff is playing out on YouTube. So other people are going to go into this or study it later. They're going to see how people just wanted money out of this. And, you know, it's like, imagine, we've been in this for 8 years now. So we've seen a lot of these channels pop up and go. Remember the psychic grift? I mean, there's been so many. And this is going to be the latest one. And they're not going to be able to now, like, it's going to be hard to recover their reputations, especially on YouTube, after they, you know, lose their audience. And the same group of people, when they go to the next case, people are going to start to realize that it's like a whole new, like, way to make money.
Yep. And you've even seen them during this trial process. Some of them have even kind of got a bit bored of it while we're waiting for info, and they've jumped onto like other high profile cases, you know, and started to put this stupid conspiracy theories out on those too. I've seen it myself. It's just like they'll jump to anything. When you have
so many of the public agreeing with you, you're going to stay with that content, you know, and it's crazy how many. That's always their argument, I've noticed, to me, is they'll be like, well, you see how much the public opinion cares. You know, the public opinion is he's not guilty. And it's just like, they're just spreading it so that way more people think, okay, well, I don't want to think like everybody else, so maybe he isn't guilty. I don't know. It's stupid, but it's just the way that they try to change public perception. I knew when they started going to like higher YouTube channels. I know I had a problem with Christina Randall. I don't know if y'all know her, but she has over 1 million subs, and they got to her channel too. And then I was looking back at content from some of these creators that like changed course, like Grizzly, like completely flipped sides, right? And you go back a year ago, and their content was on to he's guilty. I mean, they were bringing up Kathy's Facebook pictures and videos, and then as soon as that group swooped in and started giving him money, you know, they all switched to hardcore, like he's not guilty.
Yeah.
They're going to lose credibility with their own audiences too, I'm sure.
Well,
They,
and
most of them are
that's
the
why
same
I,
people.
first of all, that's one of the reasons, you know, I guess it depends on the purpose of why you're doing YouTube. And I don't knock anybody for sitting there and making money. Trust me, I know how hard
Yeah.
work this is. I know how much time you have to put into it, and it costs money to do, right? You know, you get StreamYard, you get all this stuff for you to do the channel. I get it.
Yeah.
But you know, and so I don't knock people who ask and can get money and do whatever.
There are good people who make a living off of it, you know, and
Yeah.
they
I
deserve
think there's a
to.
way to do
And
it too.
And
I mean,
I really don't want to screw with all of that and mess with all of it. But I also don't want to not inform people. And this is
Yeah.
just my opinion, and this is how I run my thing. So I'm not knocking anybody, but I don't want to make you have to pay to hear about a story I'm trying to help get information out about that's not solved.
Yeah, it's
Or
not about us or you or that's not like you.
I think it's the
step
way
away
you
and
tell
remove
your
yourself.
audience. I think because some people believe that these creators are genuine and good at heart and would do the right thing, and then to find out they're just making money off you to spin a narrative. I mean, at least come up with a clever disclaimer to where you can relay that to people.
I mean, you know, I'm going to say this, you know what the biggest
I feel like
shocker
my
to
job
me
is to warn those people.
there is a lot of I mean, I really am shocked. Okay, I'm going to just throw her name out right now. I am really shocked of the whole Barbara McDonald thing.
Oh, I'm
Because
same, girl.
and I was shocked about even I'm trying to
That's why I'm
remember
so
which
proud of
station was.
Susan Hendricks. I am so proud of that woman. She could have went the Barbara route, but she did what in her heart was the right thing to do, and she didn't.
Yeah, she stuck by
waver
the
from
family.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that was, and that's kind of part of the thing, because there were some news things at the very beginning. I remember that they kind of just, oh, well, now, you know, oh, Court TV is now going to report on it or whatever. And the people would be on there and I'd hear them not say the girls' names correctly. Right?
Yeah, or their
I'm gonna say it
ages.
again,
or
Abby and Libby,
something.
saying out their names. But here's the thing. They wouldn't even know who the girls' names were. They would bring up something that doesn't make sense. It's like the people reporting it didn't know the case, didn't know what was going on about it. It didn't give a rat's ass, to be honest with you. It was just to cover it, and then that was it. But then when you have other people who, when you think are going to be a reporter, a true reporter, and I'm not going to get political, but I'm just going to say, when you've got people who should be actual investigative reporters and report to everybody what is the truth, not what is a theory over here, not reading a press release from the defense team over here, you know, it's. And here's the thing.
You've seen those screenshots I put out about her, though. That same group of people that promotes all these other channels to doing the wrong thing, they were. She was in their DMs too, and
you know
saying
what?
that she wouldn't. She, you know, we'll do this in a way where nobody finds out or some shit like that.
Yeah, you have been a champion.
So she
pointing that stuff out
for sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sucks. It cost me my relationship, but it just, you know, I was with that guy for 8 years.
I saw the new guy mowing your lawn, so you're doing all right.
Thank you guys. Y'all, you guys have been so kind to me, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I appreciate that. I know that stuff's rough. I mean, I never thought that you could go out and you're trying to report details and stuff of true crime, and then you get people who say the harshest and stuff things to you. I mean, I sit here and don't go ugly on anybody. I try not to do it. And then you could sit here and then get, you know, people that suddenly I get messages from who people are just rude because I say, hey, this is what the police
and
found.
It's all mostly just a couple people with like 100 alternate accounts. I mean, you can tell there's a certain like 10 of them that all use the same words, spell the same, you know, the dialect is the same.
You don't know where they come from or who they are, but you know. We know where they
Yeah.
come from.
But yeah, they make it seem as if there's so many people that agree when in reality that's just one guy with 100 accounts in his
Well,
basement.
and Jamie, you know what's sad is that they had the other day that, you know, people were, you know, starting to try to gather out the courthouse. And then you've got, it was sad because the people who were starting to show up out there were pro-defense people, you know, going out there and then people that were like, oh, well, you know, they want to show justice for Abby and Libby, and people are going out there for that. And then people can't act like adults while they're out there.
New Wi-Fi.
Isn't that the truth? If they don't act that way online, they're definitely not going to in person either.
No.
I was just in tears when I heard the verdict. It's my mother's birthday too today, her heavenly birthday.
Aw.
Yeah, she
Happy
passed
birthday.
away a few years ago during this whole case. That's where this has been the longest 8 years of my life.
Wow. Yeah, mine passed away in 2009 or 19.
So you lost.
And so it was the
Yeah.
very beginning of the case and stuff like that too. And you know, it's just amazing how long this has been. And you know what? And here's the thing. I mean, when people say, "Oh, well, you're not pro-defense," no, I'm pro-truth. And
Right.
I'm also pro-common sense. Like I've said a million times, Jamie, I don't think the theory that the defense kept working with made any goddamn sense. So why wouldn't they give that Odinist shit and drop it? Why would they not
it's like
drop it?
they didn't do enough of their own research on the basics of this case and what we
they've
know
been
to be
depending
fact.
on armchair lawyers to do all their work for them. I said that too. Like, you know, that Frank's report, all that crap that they were putting out, like they didn't write that or come up with the stuff that was in that. You know, it was
Yeah,
their
the
little
Frank's
armchair
hearing.
lawyers. And at the end of the day, they didn't go to law school and know, you know, like the best strategies in the world. I don't know. I just
mean,
am so over
that's
this
like
new
if
defense
they-
attorney grift.
But problem
Yeah.
is that they were still trying to call, you know, like they were going to call Keegan Klein, which I've said a million times. I don't know why you
I thought
wouldn't.
so too.
I would too.
thought
But
so
here's the
too.
problem. The reason they couldn't is because they were still going to use and claim that Keegan Klein is part of the Odinist shit. If they would have said, well,
Or
Your
that
Honor,
he knew info about it for
right,
sure.
they would say, Your Honor, we know that this man was found communicating as a fake profile. He said he was trying, you know, he always tries to meet them, communicate with them, trying to meet them. We know that the police said he was talking to them the morning of that they were murdered. I mean, my God, Jamie, that's like a freaking easy thing to portray.
I still can't get over all that suspicious shit with Keegan. I still can't get over some of that. It's just, what are the odds?
I'm telling you,
No,
I think
we ain't over it.
that one test, the one confession where he says, unsolicited, I did all this all by myself and nobody helped me. Why would he say that?
That is
Why would he
weird.
say that? I think somehow he knew they were going to be there, and it's just figuring out how did he know? Because he passed by. I mean, think about that. He had standing on the edge of that rail. He has the gun with him, right? So why did he not get Betsy Blair? She was right there completely by herself.
Right. So, yeah, and just one person and not two.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I did. It's possible it's because she was a little bit older than what he wanted, but he did pass those three girls too. And it's like, why didn't he at least follow them somewhere? Like they were going to back towards the Freedom Bridge.
And him telling his wife, you know, acting as if he was concerned about what's going to happen to his wife while he was in there. Like, because he's not out, he can't protect her. So who are these people that he has, you know, why so worried?
Yeah.
I mean, she
Right.
quit her job, moved in with the mom.
Yep.
And it's
But
apparently he said as well that he told when he went to visit his mother in Peru that morning, apparently he told his mum he was working that day, but he obviously didn't tell that you know, to anyone else, and that was a lie. So it's just like, again, he lied to his mum about where he was
And
going, what he
3
was
beers
doing.
doesn't get you drunk enough to go turn around and go out to the woods to kill two girls. To tell me you were only planning on raping them, but you had a gun and a box
Yeah.
knife.
And I've said this,
Right.
he has to be the luckiest guy in the world then to just come across the two most perfect victims in the timing he did between when Betsy Bliss saw him and the girls would have approached the bridge. That would have been such quick thinking, and yes,
I
that
think
these are
instead
the
of
ones.
being at mom's house, he was at Tony Klein's house and messing around,
Amen.
catfishing these
Look,
girls
there-
together.
Jamie,
There
I
you
think
go.
that he met them out there that morning because remember, the law enforcement knew that both of them were up at 8 o'clock in the morning that day.
Hmm. And that witness saw a vehicle that moved twice, I think, or once it moved very early in the morning. A vehicle that was parked there early in the morning. And he later came out, I think, when he was on his lunch break or something, and that vehicle was still there. But it was before the girls arrived, for sure.
Well, let me tell you, Jamie, I
The
found
purple
the
PT
actual
Cruiser
VIN number.
too.
I got the VIN number of a PT Cruiser owned by a family member of Richard Allen's. Verified
Yeah,
it.
I have a Google Earth video on my channel where went to Google Earth and there was a purple PT Cruiser parked in front of somebody's house that is a family member.
Well, we're talking about the cruiser that was in front of PT Cruiser owned by the Kleins, but but there's a PT Cruiser owned by a family member, and that family member is in Peru. And so if Richard Allen comes back, how do we know that the Kleins didn't need him and they drove the PT Cruiser back over there? So it wasn't Linda Klein's, it was Richard Allen's relative. They drive the PT Cruiser back over there.
Oh, wow.
Nothing linked to them.
What are the odds there's that many purple PT Cruisers driving around that small area too? That's kind of
PT
weird.
Cruisers, first of all, they were pieces of
But
shit.
they were really trendy at one point in time. I remember that when
they were out there, but once
the Kia
people got them
Souls
and
now.
engines don't work and shit like that.
Yeah.
But
That is
purple
crazy
was
to think
very
about.
easy to spot, right?
Yeah.
And this
Very.
PT Cruiser was not a purple. It was kind of like a blue, but the color that you kind of look at, and when you look at it from different directions, it can kind of look like a different color. I can't think of what that mix is called.
Odessence, I don't know. I know it's kind of like it shifts. The color shifts depending on what it's reflecting
what
off
angle
of,
you're looking at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know that family member got it crushed in Colorado.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Like afterwards, that car has been demolished.
Yes, within a couple of years, it was then
See,
crushed.
it's all these little hinky things. That's what you think these little rights for Richard would be doing. Like, okay, well, if he's guilty, then let's let this shit out because there's more than one person involved or something, you know?
Right.
Go shit. At least your heart clear when you go to bed.
That's kind of when we said earlier, you know, do we still have any kind of questions that they didn't really address in this trial that we're still wanting answers for? And I feel like there were a little bit of things that we could have had more info on that we didn't. And I think it could have possibly been because they still do speculate more involved. And, you know, they can't really say that on the stand.
Well, right. Till this day, the tip line and tip phone number is still open.
I think there is a huger investigation with a certain ring of types of people.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And what did
I hope they
Carter
get them all
say?
too.
What did Doug Carter say when he was interviewed and asked about Keegan Kline? And he said, all I can really say about Keegan is he helped us gain significant investigative leads. Really? In what?
Yeah.
Like how? Like, you know? He's talking about Delphi.
If you want to talk about, and I will say this, the only one thing I do agree with some of the defense supporting people is there were some screw ups from the law enforcement, no doubt. I mean, obviously the freaking tip for Richard Allen is one of
Yeah,
them.
and
That
losing,
thing is
you know,
huge.
recordings, interviews, that kind of stuff is really shitty as well. You know,
You've got the you know, photos, the camera stuff from the damn Marathon gas station that was lost.
See, that is just too much to like let go. I feel like it's just too many things.
Imagine if they didn't have a Hoosier Harvestor.
Imagine.
Yeah,
And I heard that camera wasn't just some grainy piece of shit camera either. Like I was expecting like for them to not know exactly who came by there, what the car was, all those things. They were so vague about that. That I thought must have been like shitty quality video, but I heard it was really good.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they even stated that it was Richard Allen's vehicle because it was the only vehicle of that type listed in Carroll County between 2016 and 2017. So again, that's how they were able to identify his vehicle in that video. And with the gas station, I always found it interesting that they only ever stated, you know, that was kind of lost, they couldn't get it, something happened, it was corrupted or something. But we never heard any more, like, was there anyone working that day that saw anyone or talked to anyone? Any witnesses there that would have seen anyone? Like, we heard nothing more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in a cold
Well,
case, you would think they would have put that out there way sooner than what happened. You know, if they possibly knew a sighting for their, you know, alleged killer at a gas station or something. I mean, even if the tip was lost, you think they would put that out.
right. Well, and
Or
remember,
the video was lost or corrupted or whatever happened with that one. It's been so
everybody
damn
knew
long, I
early
forget.
on that the person was parked at the CPS building. Everybody heard that at the very beginning. And I remember at the very beginning, I'm sitting here going, why aren't they telling us what the hell the car is? I kept
Yeah,
going,
that
why?
was very odd because there must have been two, at least that's what I would think, like maybe a purple PT Cruiser. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, was it a tactic on their behalf? They didn't want to elude anyone, that they knew there was more than one vehicle there that was seen, you know, so they just talked about one in particular and wanted to talk to that person. I don't know.
And
It is
Richard
strange.
Allen, it claims that Richard Allen allegedly told his wife. Well, if he told his wife, first of all, he didn't want Dan Doolin to go to his house. But if he told his wife, then why wouldn't they have then? Okay, if your husband tells you he's out there on the trail and you see the video, come on, everybody was like, if you saw the video, would you know whether it's your boyfriend or your husband? Well, shit, if your boyfriend and your husband tells you, hey, I was out on the trail that day, and then you see a photo.
And you're wearing the outfit you've probably seen him wear 1,000 times.
Exactly.
You've washed it, you know, for him. You know.
Yeah,
you know, you're
exactly. You would
every
know.
piece of it. Yeah.
Like they would know.
I remember one of my
But we also
partner's
heard that
friends,
lie come
they
out
don't-
that, you know, where people are saying, his friends are saying, hey, he told us he was there and he was cleared. So like, I wonder if they didn't tell him he was cleared, or Dan went like, okay, you're cleared, and that's why I got put on the thing. Because there were
Oh,
people
right.
that questioned it when they kept seeing the video everywhere. I mean, we've seen
But
that
who
video
wrote
what,
that?
1,000,000 times.
How can
So
you
his
write
friends probably
cleared
questioned it.
How can anybody write cleared if he had the wrong last name listed on it and his house thing was wrong? How would that be possible?
And I just
You
can't
know
get
what I
over the
heard is
fact
there's another Richard Whiteman that does live in that area though. Isn't that suspicious?
I'll hunt that
Maybe
down.
he
girl.
gave
I'll
the
let you
wrong
know if it's
name. He's
true.
like, okay, well,
I'll let you know if it's true. I'll find him.
Yeah, but then that means
somebody,
they still
somebody
didn't
is
even-
reporting on that.
That means that
It is
someone
quick.
they didn't even look into the real Richard Whiteman then, because they would have realized that he's like, hey, I'm not the person to give you this statement. Like, what the hell?
I want to
Well,
say
right.
I've heard that Richard Whiteman is very suspicious too, though. I forgot who was reporting on this, but I heard it on somebody's channel that I don't think is horribly uncredible. So, yeah, I would
Okay.
definitely check into that. I was thinking about doing it. I've just been
Well,
so busy.
and here's the thing: there, you've still got where it had the notation that he saw 3 girls, and it's even saying about following up. And then here's the other thing: why did
Took
they
his
not come
details of his
forward when he
phone.
said who's parked at the CPS building? in 2019 when they go,
Yeah.
here's the new photo. And by the way, who's parked at the CPS building? Why did he not come forward to say I was parked at the CPS building?
Yeah, why didn't Dan Doolan say anything though as well? Because he was around.
Yeah, why didn't Doolin
all of
say
this.
anything? Like, I'm sure
Yeah.
Doolin had to have questioned this 1,000 times. I mean, damn,
When
got it nightly on our YouTube channels. There was the playing every single day. If you were there, you know, asking
Yeah.
for help, and why would Doolin shut the fuck up?
and over the
That is,
years,
that's
especially
very
for
hinky
Brad,
to me.
you know, he was there at the press conference with them all when it was being discussed and when Bridge Guy's video and everything came out, and he never once kind of stood there and wondered if it was the man he met with and spoke to. Like, it's just very, very strange.
Yeah, he would remember that. I mean, he wouldn't forget that. That is
No,
very
not at all.
strange.
Especially if you only conducted a few, not that many interviews in comparison to what they collected, and then all of a sudden you hear all the details and stuff that's going on. I mean, how do you say nothing was weird about it, nothing stood out, but yet you make the comment he won't meet at the police station and he won't meet at his house? I mean, that makes it suspicious right there.
You make that statement in the present tense,
could
but you
be.
didn't do anything about it at the time or even later on up until the point you had to be contacted by Liggett.
It's
Sorry,
just,
was
it,
it
it,
I
it
don't
just
know.
makes me, I just want to know who wrote cleared. Who wrote
Yeah,
cleared
that's
on
who
it?
I want to know. Who wrote cleared on that shit? And I'm sorry, but Doolin would remember. Like, how would you forget that, you know, they're asking for anybody that was there that day, you know, and you're just sitting back like, yeah, I talked to a dude that said he was there and seen these witnesses and all the things, and he doesn't say a word about it. Like, it's just too much for me.
Yeah.
Well, and it never got entered in Orion, Jamie. It still would have popped up in Orion as a notation for them to look at, because you enter everything in Orion. Witnesses, absolutely everything gets entered in Orion. And so since it got misfiled over to the side, I don't even call that misfiled. It's in a fucking
misfiled
box
over to the
drawer.
side, hidden in a drawer somewhere.
Right.
But you didn't want to completely get rid of it or make your hands too dirty.
And he's got
That
all
is
these
crazy.
old phones at his house, old flip phones, Motorola's, all this shit. But then his one phone that does not have an IMEI, only has an MEID that he ends up having to show to Dan Dolan. Dan Dolan at least wrote that shit down, that they know he doesn't have the same phone he had in 2017. So if it's just a friendly tip to help, why would he get rid of that phone? Doesn't make sense.
I think that they had to go with love because they're either protected for an investigation or something is up with that. Because I still, like, you know, I'm still not convinced Keegan was completely out of the picture on this one.
No,
you know, maybe that's why he lied to his mama and said he was, you know, not where he said, because he knows mama hates Tony Klein and them boys are trouble, and, you know, small towns like that. Like, he might have, that could be why too. He was over there catfishing with Keegan, drunk. I mean, can you finish 6 beers on your way from Peru to the bridge? I don't know. Maybe he was like already drunk when he left there because he was catfishing with Keegan and was like, I'm going to go really meet these girls. I don't know.
Well, I think
So many
I think
questions.
because I don't
They
think
were
Keegan would do
talking
that
about
on his
previous
own because
time.
of the age. I feel like Tony would have had assisted, because remember,
Tony just looks like a murderer.
oh yeah, he has the profile of one. I'm sorry, that's in my opinion,
Oh
but
God, yeah.
you know, but he sits here and all of the Emily Ann conversations that they did not believe was Keegan Klein was the ones that were trying to get girls to meet all across the country, trying to get girls to meet up, underage
And
girls.
doesn't Tony kind of travel across the country? I mean, he goes to Vegas and he goes down to Florida. I
He
mean,
lived
Yeah,
in
where
Arizona.
are the charges for that for them? Where
Yep. So when you go and you look through all that stuff of what's going on, then you also have to think about what he was Googling, what he was trying to Google to look at in October before he was arrested. And when you look at that, he's trying to find the worst of the worst, kidnapping videos, all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that
I
was
had a
bizarre.
tip very early on from a person, and at the time I did not share that stuff I don't even know how long ago it was, Paige. I got it a long time ago,
It
didn't
was
I?
literally the day after, I think, that
Well, kudos
you
for
knew
not
you knew
announcing
him
I
it
get
when
a
you
that.
should
tip that,
have.
that somebody
very
tells
soon.
me he's into horror
I hate
porn.
it. Yeah.
And
And I
that
was like to you, JSD, when you told me that
and,
that
and
is
That
the
horrorcore
worst.
porn shit now that's like, oh, that is so weird. But yeah, I think there's a
Yeah,
whole group of those pedophiles.
it's the
well,
two worst words you can ever put together.
well, and here's
Like,
the thing. What has it been in common of all of these CSAM people that have been getting busted in groups as they go from certain people's devices to the next people's devices to the next people's devices? Of all of them are who have been sharing images with each other or going into what I believe is the same Dropbox and sharing. The very low
Well, and they
percentage.
have to share it. They don't get invited to the group, you know, or they
Right,
don't move up in the group. So it's like they have to share at
and
some point.
And
yeah, Selena.
I shared this stuff about from the Tebow Foundation, right? He does a lot of support and stuff also for victims and unidentified victims of CSAM and trying to identify them. And he supports
Yeah.
for trying to get more financial money to try to help NetMec identify these kids to be able to rescue these kids. And one thing he
Yeah.
testified to Congress is the low percentage, although there is a percentage of the worst of the worst, which is torture and even younger children, meaning toddlers and infants.
Yeah,
and that.
like
What has
that's
been
awful.
in
The worst.
common for all of these guys who got busted that they had? They use the term aggravating factor when they find it.
Right.
And who had that? Emily Ann had that. Remember, there were 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds on that shit.
Right.
Brett Eastman, who was from Delphi but was busted in Anderson, had that. All of his shit was torture of infants and toddlers, young children.
What was it that Josh Duggar had that? And he was a high profile case that happened during Delphi, actually. He got busted. We should I should go back and rewatch that. I bet there's some interesting things to learn from that. Because he had the aggravating factors. There was this one in particular video that is apparently the worst of the worst. It was like an infant and tortured. And Josh Duggar had that on his phone or one of his devices.
Well, we had a man that was brought back from Alaska, FBI. He was from Indianapolis. He had been busted here for CSAM. He moved to Alaska. They ended up finding his shit. He got busted for CSAM, brought back here. And he not only had infants and toddlers and torture, but there was a dead child in one of those videos.
Right.
So if all these people have this and they're sharing the worst of the worst, it takes a while. That CSAM tracking takes a while to go through. And then to go through all of this stuff and then be able to track the IP and do all that stuff. So when they're doing all of it, now you have Richard Allen, who's looking up a teenager who kidnaps a grown man or torturing or, tying up and all this kind of stuff. Well, what kind of hell porn do you think he's freaking looking at when he's admitting he wants to go rape these girls?
Yeah. And honestly, I think what we learned about his behavior in prison, it did not make me think more towards psychotic break, mental health behavior. It gave me personally an insight into who he is, his behaviors. And honestly, up until the point of all of this, I couldn't really even build a profile of him in my head. But now I do think he honestly is very dark, the stuff that he is into.
A very sick individual. Yeah.
Very, very bad. Yeah.
Well, and he wasn't planning on just raping the girls. You think he was going to rape them and then let them go? There's no way. And why was his main target on Libby? Libby is the one who was who was the person communicating with an Anthony Shots. So why was he so focused on Libby?
It kind of makes me mad. Like, I wish we had that info. Like, why wasn't he asked and questioned? Like, what the hell? Like, was your motive for this? Why did you inflict these injuries on Libby compared to Abby? Why was Abby clothed? Why was Libby not? Like, you know, those are questions that I'm sure even family members would want to know. Like, I'm sure Libby's family is literally, they were wondering why in the first place, like, why them? But the treatment of Libby is just so, you know, it's different to Abby as well. And you got to wonder why.
And he spent an hour with them, because when her phone stops moving at 2:32, when they get across, the next eyewitness doesn't see them till like a quarter till 4, or see him a quarter till 4 on 300. What was he doing with them for an hour?
Yeah, and it doesn't take that long to get from the crime scene to where he was seen on that road.
It's not that far. At all.
You know, and did the whole murder like take that amount of time? Like,
I think that I mean, the longer the defense fights for him to appeal, they're going to keep his mouth shut, and they're not going to let him tell anything else about anything else that happened. But if anybody else is involved,
they can. Nameless Wonder in the chat has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go there. Sorry, Nameless Wonder. I'm just yapping like a maniac here. Can you see that page?
Do you want me to read it for you?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so they said, I believe he was aiming for Libby and she was the entire target. I'll always believe this was planned. It's connected to the Anthony Shots account. Can I ask a huge question that hopefully you know? And I'm sure she does, to be honest. So ask away. There's not much she don't know about the crime.
You know, the Long Island serial killer has some of that types that was searching for some of that types of torture stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
and I even
crazy how some of these really big cases. I mean, Josh Duggar with his, and you know, now they think the Long Island serial killer. I know some people believe that there was a whole group of like torturing, murderous people involved with him too.
Well, here's the thing. There were definitely people doing the same thing, because so Rex was using Backpage to get these girls. Well, there was a serial killer here in Indiana who was doing the exact same thing. And I covered that about
oh, I have to go back and check that out.
Yeah, because there was a guy, he was busted, he was near Chicago area, but and the parents came forward because there were some girls that were underage, and he was using Backpage, and he would use Backpage to communicate, and that was basically their victim list, just like it was for, you know, Gilgo Beach / Long Island serial killer. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Nameless Wonder asked the question. Do you want me to read it too, or?
Sure.
Okay, so did you ever watch the Lost Delphi documentary filmed with Hannah Shakespeare? It disappeared from the internet right before the case, and the media suppressed it just before the trial. Yeah, we did watch that, didn't we, JSD?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Is that that's the one where it had the friend.
Big Salt had it on his channel.
Yeah, that's the one. It's
so the one who had the boy who was a friend, and he commented that Libby had said that there was somebody bothering her on her phone, and it was right before, because she had her aunt clear her phone for her. Now, I'll say two things about that. Now, either Libby had it cleared because there's somebody else who's bugging her and whatever, although he said that it was like a 19-year-old, and which would be exactly what Anthony Shots was saying, right? But
that was
the other thing could be
correct.
A lot of these pedophiles, though, before they meet up with a girl or before they come to pick up a girl at their homes or meet them in the neighborhood or whatever,
They'll get them to wipe
clear
the
their
phone.
phones.
Right.
For they won't find, they think they'll clear up the evidence and stuff like that too. That's where another screw up happened with the police. That Keegan Klein had a phone that was left behind, probably
Yeah.
hidden by his own father in the microwave to keep them from getting the goddamn phone. And then you've got Richard Allen's own phone from 2017. That if I'm going to bet you money that if he would have went to the police station and said what he said, they could have sat
They
there and
would
go,
have-
huh, he kind of looks like this. Huh,
Yeah,
he's got this.
they would have
Why
took
don't we
his
get his
phone.
phone?
Yeah, they would have. They would have asked right there and then, like they did in 20, like when he was re-interviewed and they asked for his phone, and first of all he said yeah, and then he was like no. Why did he even say no then if he knew maybe there was nothing to do with them on that phone? Obviously there was.
Right.
And yeah, he knew that if he went there in 2017 that that's what they would do, and he probably would have been fucking arrested so quickly. Sorry to swear, but my
Well,
God.
and so that's the other thing. When you have Chris Cecil from the Internet Crimes Against Children for the that runs the whole department for Indiana, and he sat there, and what was his testimony during this, and what has been his testimony? We don't have anything digital to connect the Kleins and Richard Allen. Well, no shit. Look how it's been 7 years. You let him get rid of the goddamn phone, and you let that. Now that doesn't mean they can't find something, because all those other devices or his laptops, if he went and ever, which is he going to remember everything he used back then, if he went ever to access a Dropbox or communicate with that, they would find out like what he's using or whatever. I mean, the other big thing too is what the hell was the connection with the Yellow app?
Right.
That
And
was exposed. That was exposed very early on or late on, much later, saying that Anthony Schatz was using that. Well, who the hell was using Yellow app? That isn't on charges for Keegan Klein. That's
and
not
when
an
he
app
was
they charged him with.
when he was talking to Murder Sheet, he did kind of say, you know, they questioned me about an app, and then he sounded like he didn't know what it was called, and then he obviously said Yellow app, and you know, we were like,
Carrie
yeah.
poorly too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Carrie. It was Carrie that he was treated poorly. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think the only way they get more information out is if they turn around, and I think the prosecution could have been like, hey, you know, I originally kept saying I thought they'd offer him a deal and he'd take a deal, because he kept saying, like, he kind of seemed like he wanted it over with. He said he found God. He just wanted to just say it and be done. But you know, he didn't, because his defense really wasn't letting him. They were like, no, we can get this clear. Don't worry about it. They messed up so many times. Don't worry about it. Well, I was like, okay, so you're going to risk if he found guilty. Well, now here we are. He was found guilty of all of it, because you also wouldn't leave the Odinist theory and create some other type of reasonable doubt. So that's your fault. You stuck on that. So now it could be that the prosecution, before, you know, they're going to come up here, the prosecution is going to recommend the amount of time. The defense is going to give character witnesses, which now will be finally when, you know, they have his daughter go up there to talk, his mother, his wife go up and say, you know, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then try to figure out what the sentencing is going to be. So the only last kind of bit that the prosecutor can offer is, if the chance he would go after the death penalty, he could try to take that off the table and give him life. They could offer him to be in a prison close to where his wife and mother live, right? And that would be the thing of, but we need you to tell the full story, the whole story.
Right.
Is anybody else involved? Or did anybody else set this up for you? Or did anybody, you know, else know you were going to be there? We'll see.
Yeah, and I guess if they keep this tip line open still, I mean, that must speak to a lot.
Yeah. But it took a long time to get here.
You
There
know, I
was,
always thought it was kind of hinky that Zach Vermillion guy accessed that Dropbox the day, like on the 14th.
yeah.
I mean, what of all the days, it was just like, and then his stuff kind of disappeared off the internet for a little bit, or something weird happened with his case, like being able to look it up online. I can't remember what it was, but I do remember looking him up, and you know, the like how you guys were looking up other offenders that have gotten busted around there.
Yep.
And there was a YouTube channel that had a story about his tip not getting taken seriously for this Delphi stuff. And he talked about this guy that he met from Craigslist that was helping him work on his car. And, you know, he had a younger brother, and in the comments, somebody put Zach Vermillion is the person, because the guy didn't want to name him on his YouTube channel. And that's when I looked up Zach and found out when he accessed that Dropbox. That was just a weird thing too that happened, at least in my research of things.
Yeah,
when I was
sure.
sleeping it.
Well, most of the people who have got busted for CSAM, which is a lot, if you guys have not seen my map and stuff of that, go look at the Norfleet video I did, because I show you everybody who's busted in there.
Yes.
That shows
God, that
everybody
is
all living near
crazy.
each other. And I
Right.
don't think
And
it's done. It's not done. I mean, remember, Brent Eastman is being represented by Baldwin.
really,
Yes, he's his attorney. And Brent
you know,
Eastman
all
lived
those
in
attorneys
Delphi and
over
then
there
moved
are
over to
so fucking
Anderson.
shady.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, there's something similar with Keegan Klein too.
Yep. I mean,
Then
you've
we
got a
have
lot
Judge
of,
Fouts who was also into weird stuff, and
Oh
then
God,
he,
we could.
you know,
Yeah.
like all those attorneys and judges, some of them, there really is corruption and shadiness, but I don't think it's on the part of, you know, people wanting to see justice for these people. I think maybe they have some family members or brothers, sons, or whoever, daddies that are in this little ring over there. They just help cover it up.
well, and you've got a lot of stuff. I mean, that's like the girl who did the video. That's the reason that Faust
Fouts,
stepped down. I mean, she
Detective
talked about
Jalen.
that her friend was sitting here with stuff that was being posted on Craigslist, and it was talking about girls and women being assaulted, right? Sexually assaulted by a group of guys.
Yeah, a group. I
And
bet they're the attorneys and judges around that area,
and
and
he
their
said,
family
and
members.
right, and said that they were
moved.
high up people, and that's why she did her own YouTube
And
channel.
she
I know.
screenshotted the messages. Remember, I think this is what happened.
Yep.
She screenshotted the messages off that person's phone and read them on her channel, and it was talking about a group of people and what they do. And she said when she seen it had children, that's when she was like, okay, I have to do the right thing.
Right.
Right. And
Yep.
you can, like, people have said some shit about her, but watching it, you can tell how terrified she is that she is even telling this. She's in disbelief herself that she is saying these words.
Yeah, she seemed very genuine. I
Yeah.
hate people think that, you know, just because people have addictions or have lived a certain life that they can't all, you know, they can't be credible at all. And it's like, you know, two things can be true. I mean, you know, it was like the guy in the Long Island serial killer case that broke into the sheriff's or the chief of police's car, right? And found a bag of like dildos and like
Oh, right.
snuff
He found
porn
the
films and stuff
snuff
like that.
film.
And that sheriff brought him in and beat the hell out of him, handcuffed and stuff. And he ended up suing and winning. You know, because he was on heroin and a junkie. People didn't want to give him the time of day. But it's like, you know, two things can be true at one time. You know, you can still be a victim.
Yeah, and
even if
knowing
you do
how-
drugs.
Well, that's why that they were trying to cover him or get him to shut up, because he found a snuff film that officer had in his
Right.
Yeah.
van.
And knowing
I mean,
what we know
that's
about
the other thing. You
will,
got to think the
Christopher
other thing
Lowe
Richard Allen can be
is his
scared
name,
of
I think.
is if he is a part of a group that has, you know, been doing CSAM and stuff
Involved.
like that.
Yeah.
These guys don't want to be busted and their lives ruined for looking at shit that's
no,
messed
they
up.
will go after they will go after his family and things like that. Like, you know, you may think it sounds like a movie, but this is real life. These
They want
rings
it to
and
sound that
people
way so
exist.
the media doesn't report on it. That's why a lot of these people have went to
Yeah.
YouTube
And
now
a
to
lot of police and stuff won't even touch it, even if they know anything, even if they're not involved, they can't involve themselves because it's too dangerous.
right, exactly.
Well, here's the thing. The FBI, it takes a long time. I mean, any of these networks, any of these rings, it takes a long time for them to bust all of them. And when they're trying to get at somebody else, they've got to wait and they hold back until they get most of the people. I'm telling you, this is going to turn into a ring name that's going to end up being announced by the FBI. I mean, think about this. Think who was in the press conference with when Richard Allen was announced that they arrested him. That yes, Doug Carter said no more FBI, which I have a whole thing why I think that is. But who were the US Marshals?
Right.
US Marshals and stuff are in there. Why do you think that level of people are in there? We've also had people who have been trying to kidnap and take out Indiana girls and take them to different states. And we've had people come in like the two guys and a girl that came in from South Dakota and kidnapped an 11-year-old here, and they got them before they left. And they went to meet her. She goes to meet them. They get her in the car. They drug her, and they end up finding them before they leave. And they save that girl. Well, there's something going on. I think it's beyond just CSAM. I think it's child sex trafficking that's going on, and that's why
Right.
it's taking
And remember,
longer for them to progress this.
remember a guy that you found that was busted in Indiana, and he had links to another guy that was busted in the UK.
Yep.
Remember?
Yep.
Yeah, they're everywhere and they're all together, and that's why it's so hard to link them all because they are literally in different countries as well, in the same rings.
Nameless, when you
It's
say
just
Orion, what
horrific.
do you mean? Do you mean Orion, the system law enforcement uses, or something else? Yeah, because I'm not sure if you mean Orion being used by law enforcement, yes, that is what system they were using to gather that all of the different law enforcement agencies could enter all the details in. Every witness, every potential suspect that's called in, every tip is supposed to be entered in Orion. So we'll wait
See,
and
I
see.
bet that ring didn't inspire, because this Delphi stuff, it got so much attention. And I wonder if they, because sometimes the stuff is easy to cover up, but with these girls, I'm telling you, their legacy is going to be way bigger than what people think it is.
Oh, absolutely. And I think
And
that
we
the
all
other
started
reason,
reporting on YouTube channels to get around mainstream media, so they couldn't control the narrative anymore. And now look, here we are, and I hope that it leads to a possible somewhat of an ending of some of this trafficking. I mean, that's just horrible to think about.
Nameless, have you seen the video I did about Dan Dolan and the Orion system? I show what the tip form looks like that the police
I didn't
use.
see
I
that.
explain it. Yeah, I explained that way back when I knew that there was something about him talking to Richard Allen, and that maybe how something could have happened when it was entered in Orion. Well, now learning that it wasn't ever even entered in Orion makes that a whole different thing. But it was used for the April Tinsley case in Fort Wayne, and it was used for the DC sniper case. And I show the document and stuff like that of how they use it and everything for it. So I've done that on there, but that's the thing. I think when Chris Cecil from Internet Crimes Against Children for Indiana testifies and says, well, Keegan never tried to meet up with anybody. We don't have proof of that. And Keegan never gave any money to anyone. I think that kind of shows that, but he does testify that Emily Ann was trying to meet up. Emily Ann was trying to set up these meetings. So, and Emily
And
Ann
knowing
was
that,
the one,
yeah,
they had that first before that.
Yeah.
Well, if it's around the country, that's when you have to use U.S. Marshals. When it's
And
around,
what did
you're busting people from everywhere. So I can
see, you
tell
can't
you,
just make all this go away and not seem hinky when you add it all up together. I mean, it just is crazy. I mean, but I agree with you on that point, though.
When law enforcement interviewed Keegan Klein, the transcripts literally say, when they're talking about Libby, they say we have the money account going to her, when they're talking about Anthony Schott. So, like, if Keegan
Right.
Klein, there's no proof of him sending money to anyone, then
well,
who
he
did?
didn't even have any damn money.
What the hell was that,
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And did the person that Tony Klein went to go visit that person in Vegas, and he used to be in law enforcement in Indiana, correct?
He's the one who
Right.
committed suicide.
And he's very good friends with him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jan Kendall.
Yes, that was it, Jan.
Yep.
I mean, that's weird too.
And was a police officer and left and moved there just before all of this had went down. And then right after this all happened, you have that suicide. I mean, you think about it, you at least have 2 suicides connected when you think about that. And then you think about Kyle Fortson. Am I thinking right, the last name?
Yeah,
that
Forston.
committed suicide in Hamilton County, and he was connected to Westerman. Well, Fortson's family back that he moved from was out of Kokomo, but originally it originated out of Delphi. His family originated out of Delphi, and then they moved to Kokomo. But his grandmother
Wow.
and all of them, they all lived in Delphi originally. And it's just like, well, why would that happen? Why, what if he just has a photo and he's just sending a photo and he screwed up on that? Why would that happen?
Right.
I mean, I just think that there's more stuff there. And here's the thing. Well, this is all I want. Anybody else involved whatsoever that either helped a setup, knew about the setup, or even knew that it was going to happen needs to be held accountable, and definitely anybody after the fact.
And
All
was
need
it
to be
being
held
live
accountable.
streamed on Yubo? Was it available the next day for the people that aren't as higher up in the chain to see it on the Dropbox or what? I mean, it just is too much to think that it wasn't targeted.
Well,
and
I
set
have
up.
some
Like, it was
stuff
definitely a
that
setup.
Keegan Klein originally on his Twitter account back then had a lot of people that were following him from all around the country, men. And when he posted stuff on his site on the day of and days after that murder, and all the links that were in there were taken down, but it was still in there. So anybody who had posted that they liked what he was posting, you could click on and you could see.
Mm-hmm.
And I have screenshots of those people, some from Canada,
Good for
California,
you.
all of them. And I mean, there's a grown man, a huge grown man dressed like a baby doll who liked one of his posts.
Gross.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I showed you some of the people who were liking his shit,
They appear to have, a liking for children. Let's say
Yep.
that.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you look at social media, I noticed when I was sleuthing declines and stuff, I would, go to Facebook and one account leads to the next, you start looking into, and a lot of the ones I seen that looked suspicious, they all had this Alaska thing in common where they were from there to there, something with Alaska.
Yeah.
And also
Owen,
there was like, even if the person didn't have children, their profile picture would be them holding somebody's child. Could be a cousin, sister, little,
or they'd reshare a lot of like pictures of girls that looked underage, like
that
who
too.
aren't
I mean,
even
and they have their
related to
ways of
them.
identifying each other to each other. So they know, like, okay, it's safe to, I don't know. It's just so creepy. But you're right. There's a lot of people that don't want to know this shit exists.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, when you talk about, birds of a feather flock together, that is very true when you come to pedophiles and CSAM, because they have to keep that secret.
Yeah,
They
so
want that secret. So even people who may have known what is going on, they may have not come forward to say anything about it. The reason is because they would reveal, well, how do you know that? How do you know this is going on? How do you know this is happening? Oh, well,
Right.
you can't say that because I'm on a link with them.
Self-incriminating. Yeah. That's just crazy to think about, but it's a good thing that you are exposing stuff like this, girl, because it's
Yeah.
just, the mainstream media hasn't wanted to touch it ever, and I mean, this would, as a parent, make a lot more parents informed of what really is going on and how much more safe they have to keep their own children, and talk about these things. If you're online and somebody says this is what they're doing, like
that's her entire motivation for all of this.
knowledge is power.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, the latest thing that people have watched, we've had, I think it's 5, or maybe we've reached 6 now, of actual police officers have been busted for the CSAM and for exploitation of children. They literal
that's
police
terrible.
officers have all been busted. So a bunch of them that I've, I post those in the community
It was
posts and stuff
firefighters
like that
too, right?
too. Because I have a hell of a time keeping up with them. I'm gonna tell you, I used to do a video by, like maybe 30, 40 at a time. And then I just couldn't even keep up with them. I have them where I drop them in Discord because I do a massive spreadsheet on them. Because when this is said and done, I really believe we're going to hear the names of who were all involved in that network. And I want to be able to go through my list and check them off and go, yep, there's that one. Yep, there's that one. But the most common one that's supposed to be very rare are people who have these torturistic and much younger actual children.
And protect your work, girl, because you don't want anybody stealing that down the road, because your thunder's coming. I mean, all the work that you've put in and all the stuff you've done. And then you want to, protect yourself from harm too.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing.
We
I
talked
mean,
about that.
this stuff is, I mean, when we sit here and it finally gets revealed, it's public knowledge that it gets revealed. It's, people sit here, it comes out in the news. The problem is, if you're not sitting down watching the news that night, Jamie, and somebody, in your neighborhood gets busted for that, and you don't realize that, you just go on with your life, and you can't find them in a sex registry because they're not convicted yet. Right? Or they're still working a deal, or it gets freaking pled down. And I've had people watch the shows when I did the shows with it who tell me, oh my God, we know that guy. He's friends of the family. We never knew he was busted.
Yeah. JSD literally told them by a video.
And had no clue. And I just want to protect parents and protect kids and teenagers to make aware, because it's so easy. You think you're in this great place. Maybe you live in a great neighborhood and there's nothing in there and you think it's wonderful. But if your kid goes upstairs in their room with the cell phone, you just let every stranger in the world into that room. And they manipulate kids, girls and boys. And they get in the situation when it's a sextortion thing of, you send me more photos, or I'm telling your parents, or I'm going to send it to your friends, or I'm going to whatever. Either you've got these kids that are traumatized and locked into doing this, or some of these children commit suicide.
Mm-hmm. They infiltrate friend groups sometimes too. So, one of them will be their target. They'll talk to their friends also. So their friends think that person is a good person. And any concerns that victim's got that they raise with their friends, they're going to kind of be a bit more supportive because they know this person too. But he's just been grooming all of them really to get to the victim,
Thank you, Nameless Wonder. Well, and I think the way that the way that Keegan and stuff, in my opinion, that they was making money is that they were making money off of this CSAM. A lot of them were, they sell it. They sell the links in order to get to more harsher and harsher stuff. You sell more, they sell it.
You wouldn't be surprised at the protectors that are gaining from, their husbands having all this money, or, you know, certain things, like people get used to a certain lifestyle, so they'll turn the other cheek or they'll blind eye it. And some people will just cover it up because they love their husband. They don't care.
Yeah, there are some
Well-
wives who are so manipulated and brainwashed themselves by their evil husbands, who murder, who do all of this stuff, that, you know, even after the fact of knowing what they've done, they still fully support them and love them, and, you know, still think they can be a good
I call them
person.
pedophile protectors.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right, Nameless Wonder. That's the other thing. Who is the peeping Tom? We never got the peeping Tom. When you
But
talk
we know
about
it
that,
happened.
that's the girl who sat there and did. So that person, and look at what night did that happen? It happened on the 20th. It was another
Yeah.
Monday afternoon, right
And
after school.
what also is linked, she was a friend of Libby's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They were known, and it was asked for an address. And Keegan admits that he knew her. And he's like, well, why would I ask for the address? I know exactly where they live. I'm friends. I'm friends over there. Why would I ask for an address? And then
Yeah.
after that happened on the 20th, they left for Vegas and didn't return until the 25th.
Mm-hmm. And people said, you know, it couldn't be linked to the murders, you know, the Delphi murders, because, you know, who kills two girls and then go out and does a peeping Tom act? Like, that doesn't make sense. But we discussed and talked about it. Well, you know, it sounds like the killer of the girls wasn't fully satisfied by his actions, and then he went out and did this to try and gauge another victim, you know? Like, killers can do that very quickly after they kill, because if they aren't fully satisfied, they immediately want to try it again. And if they aren't caught yet, at least they will try again. And maybe it wasn't Richard Allen, but who else was it if it wasn't Keegan? And it came from the Anthony Shots account.
Well, and here's the thing. You're not worried about it if your photo wasn't taken on the bridge.
Exactly.
If it's somebody else's photo taken on the bridge, you're not worried about it. If you weren't seen by those three girls, you're not worried about it.
No.
But that's not the first time we've had peeping. There were two other peeping Tom incidents in Young America, which is near Galveston, which is where the Kleins lived as well.
Yeah, and they
Right.
were very similar. Like, if you read the news article on them, they sound the same. Like, you can't tell me they weren't committed by the same person.
And that
And
and Jamie, tell me that's not a profile of somebody who is working their way up to do something.
Right. That is. I mean, it's like they have to do that escalating behavior to get off. I mean, because it starts with this, and maybe that was able to, you know, do it for them. And then it gets worse and worse. And now we're into like killing.
Yep. Yep.
yeah, it's like, you know, if you were to describe how you think a killer would act before they actually kill, like what behaviors they inhabit before they lead up to actual murder, you know, a peeping Tom being in someone's history when they turn out to be a murderer is, you know,
Well, and
quite
people
an
who
often
knew
occurrence.
Tony Klein, people who knew Tony Klein in high school said
Yeah.
that they caught him following them.
Yeah.
He was
And
hiding behind a tree and stuff like that. This is when he was in high school.
and how strange is it, you know, the behavior where he was calling that woman over and over and like
That
masturbating
was
to her on
very
the phone?
strange.
That
You
sounds
know who else
exactly
did that?
like,
The Night Stalker. There's been
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
Golden State
Golden
Killer.
State Killer.
Yeah, so many have done that kind of behavior, and it's like, yeah, his profile from what we learned about him.
Violent with women, violent
And
with
children.
children, violent with
Yeah.
animals,
Yeah. Oh,
hypersexualism, right? You know, and you think about the stuff that was going on. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, he, in my opinion, he really builds up that profile of very easily being involved in
mhm.
something like that. And we do know from his own son's testimony that he has sexually assaulted, raped underage girls. He said he brought home a teenage girl from school when he was still in high school, and that his 40-something-year-old dad had sex with her.
Obsessed with it. Hmm.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
But
well,
it's
I do
happening.
encourage everybody to watch JSD's video on the Kleins connection. It's like 3 hours long,
Well, yeah,
but
that's the one I call that's the
it's
timeline one and stuff like
very
that too.
important. Yeah, it's very important. She puts it all together for you in a timeline where you can see why we think there is so much on the Kleins that maybe you don't even remember or you didn't even realize. Because we
I might have
looked
to go
into
back
it
just to
again.
refresh.
Yeah, we looked into it again when we were creating the video, right, JSD? And we were
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I forgot this happened. Oh my God, this, and even more connected for
And it
us
took
while
me
we were
forever.
doing
I
it.
mean, that's why I have a delay between videos because I'm a little anal
Uh,
or a lot anal.
but
And I try to get it
it's
all
good.
together to make sure I'm doing something worth everybody's while to watch. You know what I mean? But I try to get all the info and go, okay, here's everything I found. And here's
Yeah.
everything I can show. And here's all my sources.
Probably
of
because
where
it
I
just
got
gets
from.
worse and
She worked,
worse.
she worked so hard to even try and put it in a timeline. You know, imagine having all of that info and trying to accurately put it all together in a timeline. It took her forever, but she did it. You know,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
great. It's a good one.
Yeah. And Jamie, I will say again, I appreciate you. I know you got stuck in the midst of all that stuff, and you know, I know that you you know, stood up for yourself and pointed that stuff out, and we're trying to tell people what was going on, and
Yeah, we
that's a brave
appreciate
thing. And
you
I know
for
that's a
that.
hard thing. It affects your, you know, mental health and goodness for the day and all kinds of stuff when that kind of crap is going on. And
When it
you
affects
know,
your real life too,
yeah.
you know.
And
But it
That's been a
shows the
hard
kind of
part, but I
person you
still, at
are.
the end of the day, know that I did the right thing. I mean, whether people believe me or didn't believe me, but it seems like the ones that did are all the, you know, true and honest channels.
The
I
good
mean,
ones. Yeah.
right.
And that's all you
And
need.
now it's
That's all you need
documented
to
too.
know.
So when other people go back and watch this, they'll be like, hey, you know, maybe this girl was right. And see that there's a larger picture here.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple YouTube channels that are into the corruption, the cover up, the
Oh,
pedophile protect.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Here's the yeah, I could tell you about that too. That's a side conversation we need to have. But because I have some theories on that.
I'll
But
give you
I
my
will say
theory. It's
this.
a good one, but we'll do it behind the scenes.
Yes, yeah. So here's the thing. I think that the other possibility could be after the prosecutor's done with this, is there anybody else that could face any charges whatsoever, right? For leaking stuff or anything like
yeah.
that. Like I said,
Are they
attorneys
gonna?
can have things filed against them for you know, against the prosecutor could file stuff about them leaking evidence and stuff too, meaning against the review board, against their license and stuff like that also.
And I
I hope
sure
the
as hell hope
families
so.
can take. I hope the
Yeah.
families can take action against people too if they want to.
Oh,
As I
absolutely.
said.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is at least this part's over. We'll wait to see what he gets sentenced. And my God, we got to wait all the way to December 20th, unless something else kind of happens and they try to talk about time out front. But, you know, we just keep plugging away, and
Guys, my
hopefully
phone is dying right this second. I did.
all right.
No problem, Jamie. Oh, I think
Thank
she's.
you so
Yeah.
much for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate you so much. She really is one of the good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we may have lost her.
Yeah, I think her phone died.
Well, everybody, I can't say enough that this isn't up long, but I'm sure nobody's surprised by that because we've been waiting a long time to get the answers to this case. We're going to follow it to the end to let you know what the sentencing and stuff is. And we have a lot of cold cases, murdered cases, missing girls who have been murdered, who need to be solved and stuff like that. You know, that we're going to be able to be working on and bringing forward and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Paige, thank you so much for jumping. As soon as we heard, it's like, oh my God, they got a verdict's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you want to go live? And then it was just boom, boom, boom. So if you're just watching the
Literally.
beginning of this, please, the very beginning, we show the
Yeah.
families leaving the courtroom.
I think I'm
the
going to go back and rewatch the beginning as well.
the judgment of the judgment that came down from the jury of guilty on all 4 counts, 2 counts of felony murder, meaning kidnapping that led to their murder, and 2 counts of murder. And
Yeah.
wow, it's
And
there. Today
was
the day. Today was the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely, for certain.
Finally.
And I would like to say, please hit that like button. Please hit comment. I always do this so late. I did that late yesterday.
I always
or
forget
late
to. I'm
last
so
time for the
sorry.
video. It's like, dang it, I forgot to do that. But
I never remind you. I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. That's all right. Well, thank you, Miss Paige. I'm glad we got to do this
Thank
together.
you. Me
So,
too.
all right.
Well,
we'll
yeah.
catch up.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, guys. We got answers, and now hopefully we'll hear what the sentencing will be. Will the prosecution go after the death penalty since he's convicted of all 4 counts? It is eligible for it in Indiana, so we'll see. Thank you so much. Thank you for following the Abby and Libby case, and thank you for making sure justice is served daily. Goodbye, everybody.